Senator Garou,
Here.
Senator Landon, Senator Salazar, Senator Schuler, Representative Banks,
Here.
Representative Haroldson,
Here.
Representative Hunt, Representative Jennings,
Here.
Representative Knapp,
Here.
Representative Newsom, Representative Sweeney, Representative Winter,
Here.
Chairman Ellis,
Present.
Chairman Flintner.
Here.
Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Heather. Appreciate it. And again, welcome everybody. Welcome to our legislators who are joining us virtually. Thank you guys so much for participating. We've had kind of an uptick in COVID, as you all know, statewide. And so some of our legislators have been impacted by that. And that's why they are not joining us today, sadly, because they were looking forward to being here and taking a tour of this magnificent facility. We want to thank Mr. Dan Starks and family for graciously hosting us and allowing us to hold our meeting here. We just thank you so much. Thank you for making Wyoming your home. And we're just really looking forward to this afternoon. I also want to, thank you. For those of you who don't know, your Wi-Fi password is there along with the network information. There's personal protective equipment there by the coffee pot if anybody is so inclined. And then for committee members and staff, lunch today will be provided by Wyoming Downs. So we will not have to travel back to town. So we'll have lunch here, compliments of them. And those in the room, I guess, you know, if you didn't bring your peanut butter jelly, you're back to town. I think that's it. Before we begin, Chairman Ellis, do you have any comments? Okay. Well, our first agenda item is state tourism, and sadly, Director Schober has also been impacted by COVID, and I believe she is online or will be joining us online. So Director Schober, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Really disappointed that I'm not there with you, and also to take in that magnificent military transportation museum in Du Bois. But thank you for allowing me to be here. What I wanted to do today was just engage in further discussion from where we had started in May to discuss the possibilities of a Wyoming film production incentive. And I know that you all have been doing some research and have some information. We've provided a great deal of information to you. In addition to working with the subgroup of the committee members, Madam Chairman, of this Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee, there's also been an industry working group of individuals who are connected to the film industry in Wyoming. And many of those folks will either be with you today in person or have signed up, I know, to testify to provide some insight. And before I get started, I know that members of the Wyoming Tourism Board are there with you today. They held their board meeting in Du Bois yesterday and are working in concert with the Wind River Visitors Council. You know, this is the heart of some of the tourism economy in the state of Wyoming. And so I want to say greetings and to our board members who are in the room, and I'm sure they'll do a wave with you so you know who they are. But if I could call your attention to it's called the Film Incentive Draft, and it was part of your meeting materials. We got it to you this week, post the subgroup working. And I'm just going to look for your nod or your verbal cue, Madam Chairman, that everybody has that and we can proceed accordingly.
Director Schober, if you'll hold on just a second. Committee, I'll remind you that was sent just this week. You'll find it. It was an email that was sent yesterday from Heather Hunter. And there are two attachments, film incentive process, along with film incentive production. What was the title of that second one?
Wyoming Film Production Incentive Program 21 incentives draft.
So Director Schober, do you want us to open that one or the other one?
I would like for you to open the incentives draft first, if you would,
Okay.
please. So, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, through the summer, as I've said, we have been working to come up with looking at what would be an appropriate and competitive incentive program that could really drive economic activity for the state of Wyoming, that could enhance job development, could support efforts that are taking place at the Central Wyoming Community College in Riverton, and also to look at ways of just diversifying the economy. From 2007 to 2018, there was a film incentive in place in Wyoming that sunset in 2018. You'll hear it oftentimes referred to as FIFI. It stood for, the acronym was the Film Industry Financial Incentive. And so when we say FIFI, that's what we're talking about. We've renamed it so that you don't think of a French poodle, but a film production incentive. And based on the input from looking at other state incentives where Wyoming could have some competitive advantage, and certainly from the input of the industry, the film production industry, we have the following proposal for you to consider should you want to advance this as legislation. This would be a two-tiered media approach, and companies could apply for one or the other. They could not qualify for both. Starting with tier one would be the traditional media or film incentive. There would be a maximum of a 30% rebate on the qualified expenditures that were placed in Wyoming during the production shoot. The base incentive would be 15%. If the company had more than 60% of their crew and talent from Wyoming, they would be eligible for an additional 5%. If all of their post-production took place in Wyoming, or any of their qualified post-production expenses in Wyoming, would be eligible for an additional 5%. Those that will be testifying to you, there's greater economic value for jobs in post-production. And so the recommendation was that we would incentivize that to a higher level. Certainly to meet the elements of distribution and circulation and assuring that these projects have wide exposure to draw attention to the state of Wyoming, there could be an additional 2.5% based on incremental increases in production and expenses. And then if there were proven documents that there were Wyoming students and young force apprentice on crew, they could be eligible for an additional 2.5%. So based on this additional, on tier one traditional media incentive, there could be, for qualifying projects, the company at a minimum could get 15% as a cash rebate off of what they had spent in Wyoming. And then they could qualify for anything from 15% to 17.5% to 20%, 25, 30% on up. We would hold to the minimum expenditure of $200,000. There would have to be a minimum estimated exposure of 1 million viewers. That's in that circulation and the distribution. Anything over that would be eligible for that additional 2.5% on the high production circulation. Types of productions that would apply: full feature films, full feature animated and series, streaming TV series, commercials, documentaries, virtual reality. You can read through the rest. It would be required that the Made in Wyoming tag would be included in all credits, with the Wyoming script logo would be required. Recipients must keep accurate records and receipts of qualified expenditures and the number of local crew and payroll records for Wyoming resident hires. And we pulled in the language from the prior statutory language for qualified expenditures and what actually constitutes as a Wyoming resident. And recipients must have a detailed distribution plan with circulation estimates prior to production, and it must be shared with the film office at the time of application for incentive funds. So that would be the tier one approach. Tier two would be alternative media for slightly smaller productions. This would only have a maximum of a 15% cash rebate. And that would include the base of 10%. And then if there were Wyoming storylines or themes, you could qualify for an additional 5%. You would have to have minimum of 60% of your production labor to be completed in Wyoming, the minimum spend of $50,000 on qualified expenses. The types of productions that would apply would be certain commercials, documentaries, short films, animation, video games, webisodes, music videos, standalone productions, post-productions. We require also that the Made in Wyoming tag or audio would be included in all of those productions. And again, following the same definitions of qualified expenditures and resident requirements and the detailed production plan. And again, just to remind you that these would not be stackable. A production company could apply for one or the other, but would not qualify for both. In the appendix, we just wanted to give you some scenarios of what might a production incentive rebate look like. If a company came in and had $3 million of qualified expenditures in Wyoming, if they applied for the tier 1, they would get a $900,000 rebate. If they qualified for tier 2, they would only get a $450,000 rebate. But again, they could not get both. And you can see how those scenarios of Wyoming spend would lay out. Reporting requirements, these are things that have been with prior programs and would be required as part of this. These were all part of rulemaking when the last incentive program was passed. And then other measures to consider. These are things that the working group of industry, film production industry in Wyoming spoke to, but actually didn't include just because we were trying to keep this somewhat contained. But we wanted to just bring it forward so that you all could consider this too. Perhaps there would be an incentive for diversity and equity incentives, like minority-led productions, women-led productions, infrastructure incentive add-ons. When CJ Box spoke to you in May, he was talking to you about Paramount and the Joe Pickett series. Actually, when our office was working with Paramount, the Wyoming Business Council, and the Office of Tourism, we were looking at some post-production warehouses. They would have invested at a minimum of $5 million into a post-production warehouse in Wyoming. And that would have been something that should that series eventually end, that would have been remained here in Wyoming for other economic uses. Other things that you could consider would be capital purchases for improvements in Wyoming-based companies, or Wyoming goods incentives add-ons for like Wyoming products could be placed in productions, and that could be considered as an incentive. However, as we said, those did not make the grade of where we were. We felt like that to really be able to drive the economic impact and the jobs is what is contained in tier 1 and tier 2, to incentivize these companies not only for buying goods and services, but for crew hires, and incentivizing them to have the majority of their crew hires be Wyoming-based individuals. I know that many of you have, you weren't serving in the legislature, maybe weren't as familiar, even if you were serving in the legislature at the time of the prior incentive when it was in place from 2007 to 2018. And so I just wanted to review the process again of how this process worked, so that you would understand how a rebate actually would lay out in real time and what it might look like. And if I could draw your attention then to the second handout that Chairman Flitner referenced, that is titled Film Industry Financial Incentive, FIFI Process Established 2007. And so this was actually the process that was a result of rulemaking in the prior film incentive that Wyoming deployed. And so there was an application process. A production company would go online to the Wyoming Film Office site, download the application, would actually complete that application based on their proposed project. They would estimate their expenditures in Wyoming, their crew hire. They would have to provide their distribution plan, their circulation. They would complete all of that and submit it. And then from there, there was a subcommittee made up of members of the Wyoming Tourism Board, members of the film production industry across the state of Wyoming. Obviously, if they had a project that were going to be applying, they would have to recuse themselves, but there were members of the actual industry, and then 2 members of the Wyoming Office of Tourism staff. They reviewed each and every one of those applications. Did it meet the requirements of the film incentive as it was outlined in statute? And then they would make a recommendation to the Wyoming Tourism Board. So those individuals that you see in the room today would be the actual body that would actually approve an application to enter into a contractual agreement with the state of Wyoming. And then through the Office of Tourism and the production company, we would enter into a contractual agreement. All contracts are sent forward for form, function, legality to the Wyoming Attorney General. And then there would be a contract in place with that production company. No money has been transferred. It's only an application for approval once a project is completed. From there, the company would come in, they would do their production in Wyoming, shoot, hire people, purchase goods and services, lumber for production sets, cranes, crew, a variety of things that they would need. Once that wrapped and they had completed their production and all of their post-production, and they had a guaranteed distribution to get the project out and before the eyes of the public, and whatever their distribution was, maybe it was through TV, maybe it was through online, maybe it was through a motion picture, then and only then would they would submit all of their receipts that they had spent with Wyoming companies. And with Wyoming crew hires, they would have to have licenses, driver's license, or state IDs to verify that these individuals on their payroll were actually Wyoming crew. They would submit, many times it would be, a large 3-ring binder, sometimes 2 or 3 3-ring binders. Then those receipts for that project would be audited against their initial application. Once all of those receipts had been audited, and there's a double audit process, and had been checked and verified, then and only then would the state of Wyoming issue a rebate based on that contract. Now, sometimes people would submit a proposed application that they were going to spend, a certain amount of money, and there would be a proposed rebate, and that's what we would anticipate. Sometimes their production would come in less, and so they would only get the percentage based on those qualified expenditures. So if they thought they were going to spend $500,000, but they only spent $475,000, their rebate would only be based on that audited $475,000. If it went over, they were required to reapply and go through that process for the incremental difference. And so this was all done according to rules for form function to assure that the state of Wyoming's risk of any of these was limited, and actually assured that a production had completed and that it was moving forward, as we said. So I wanted to just review that process with you, just because it was, a time-consuming process of rule promulgation, as we did it in 2007 after the initial film incentive statute was passed, and we would anticipate going through the same type of process again as we move forward. And with that, Chairman Flitner, I'll pause for questions. I do have a couple of things that I do want to share with you from some other things that were brought up by the committee, but I'd like to give you all a chance to ask questions if you have them at this time, and I'll do my best to answer them. I may lean on some of the folks in the audience to answer some of the questions, but happy to entertain questions from the committee.
Thank you, Director Schober, appreciate it. And I know you can tell you're struggling a little bit, so I know you probably might need to take a drink of water. So committee.
Thank you very much.
Any questions for Director Schober at this point? Okay, that's the extent of your break, so.
Madam Chairman,
Yes. Who said that? Representative
Kat.
Banks? Okay,
Yeah.
great. You do have a question. Go ahead, Representative Banks.
thank you. Director Schober, just two real quick questions, and maybe you mentioned this and I missed it. On the tier 2, is there an exposure amount? I know in the one you mentioned a 1 million exposure on that tier 1, but is there an exposure limit on that tier 2? And then can you also talk a little bit about, do you all at the Wyoming Office of Tourism go through a recruitment process to recruit folks to film here, or is it sort of they find us, or a happy medium somewhere? Could you address both of those things, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Banks. Director Schober.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Banks, there is not a minimum distribution that is included in tier 2. We certainly could look at that and ask the working industry what their recommendation might be for that, but it is not included. And really, as a rule, because they're so much smaller, a lot of like gaming and different things are included there. Open for conversation around that, based on what your thoughts are as a group of policymakers. And in terms of recruitment, at the current time, no, the Office of Tourism does not do, there's nothing proactive that's happening. We're only reactive to the amount of inquiries that we receive. However, in the prior iteration of the film incentive, we did proactively recruit. We hosted a lot of location scouts and production crews throughout the state of Wyoming. We actually had scouts sometimes on contract in certain places around the state to go out, and if we got an inquiry, they would go out and scout in conjunction with the production inquiry. And so, but we're committed to doing that again, should an incentive program be in place, to put those efforts behind it, to draw attention to Wyoming. Right now, without an incentive program, Wyoming is really not in a high consideration set. But as we've looked at this and then just the activity in the film world today, we believe that Wyoming can be competitive in this environment. And you're not going to go obviously from 0 to 100%, overnight. We wouldn't have what New Mexico has, but it's certainly something that we could start to build toward with a variety of other individuals. And we're committed to doing our part to bring attention to the incentive program should it pass.
Thank you, Director. And I see Senator Grew has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good morning, all. Good morning, Diane. Couple of questions. The way the working group talked about this, would it be fair to say that the incentive money that you just described would come from within your own budget, within the Department of Tourism's budget? Is that correct?
Director.
Chairman Flitner, Senator Guru, there are a variety of ways that you could look at funding it, but certainly one avenue would be through the statewide lodging tax that was passed and implemented, and that is a special revenue source of funding for the Wyoming Office of Tourism and tourism-related projects. So that is one option to look at, and certainly that's been part of our discussion should you decide to move this forward.
And if I could follow up, Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Diane, and on the flip side, money that was returned, money that was made from these film productions outside of the incentive dollars themselves, I'm talking about now sales tax revenue, other revenues that would be generated by the film company working in the various communities, that money would go to the cities, the towns, and the general fund. Would that be fair?
Director.
Chairman Flitner and Senator Guru, that is true. And so from in the history, you also have a document there that gives you a history of the existing, or the prior film incentive production. And out of those years, there was $18,329,483 that was spent in the state of Wyoming of qualified expenditures. That includes wages, it includes buying goods and services, whether you're staying at a hotel or you're buying lumber from a local lumber company, you're hiring a crane and a lift. It includes crew. Of that 18 million, half of it was in Wyoming wages. So 9.1 million in total wages over that time. And when we initially started, we did not require the number of reporting for employees, but have since started, and from that point, from about 2011 on, 319 crew members from Wyoming have worked on various projects. And then that it generated, from that 18 million, or I should say the half that was not wages, would have been subject to sales and use tax. And so that in turn would have generated a variety of dollars going not only to the state of Wyoming for state sales tax, but into city and county government coffers based on the location of that film production.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Representative Jennings has a question. Oh, did Senator Grew, did you have a follow-up? Okay, Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, could you refresh our memory? When you broke that out and there was 18 million, how many companies took advantage of this per year during that time frame? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Director Schober.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Jennings, anywhere from 4 a year up to 7. And so, it just on the years when there was a larger production and there wasn't money in the, that's what really caps it, is the larger productions who are qualified for more of a rebate. But yeah, anywhere from 4 to 7 in a year.
Follow-up, Representative Jennings? Or... Okay, and Director Schober, does weather impact whether or not a film company might do business in Wyoming versus New Mexico?
Chairman Flitner, actually, I can give you 2 examples that have been to Wyoming's advantage for weather. When Quentin Tarantino was shooting Django Unchained, there's a whole section of a winter scene, and that was scheduled to be at Mammoth. He was scheduled to shoot in Mammoth in California, and that year they had no snow. And we had a group of scouts in, we were actually on a familiarization tour with some location scouts. And one of the individuals on that scouting trip had worked on Modern Family when they shot in Jackson Hole in the for their season premiere. And she called Director Tarantino and said, "You need to really think about Jackson Hole. They have a lot of snow here." And so at that time, they contemplated, and they end up shooting a section of that film. The whole winter scenes were shot on location in Teton County in Wyoming. Another example, and you'll hear from Kate Wilshire with Turtle Ranch today, but on the TV series Breaking Bad, in the finale, there's a whole scene that was supposedly Alaska, but was shot right there where you are in Fremont County in Wyoming. And so, weather can, when you think of weather, we think of winter as sometimes being bad weather, but those would be 2 examples, Chairman Flitner, members of the committee, where our winter and our snow have been to our advantage for film production.
Thank you. And also, Director Schober, what about isolation? It's easy to get in and out of, I would think it would be easier to fly in and out and fly staff and crew in and out of, say, Albuquerque than it would in some places in Wyoming. I'm just wondering how Wyoming's isolation and lack of air travel might impact this as well.
Chairman Flitner, it is true. I mean, we have some isolation issues, but as with anything, how do we then play up to what we have here? Using more Wyoming crew, subcontracting with Wyoming-based production companies as part of an overall project. And so, there's a way that those can be addressed. And I think the folks who are speaking from the industry itself will be able to give you direct information about their own experiences in how that has played out and how they've been able to address it.
Thank you. Committee, further questions? Yes, Senator, you on the end, and then we'll go with the representative.
Oh, here we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I'm excited about this idea I'll be honest that my district would be a direct beneficiary in Fremont, in Du Bois. But can you help me get a little more excited about this? I mean, what is if we go forward, and obviously we're going to have a discussion about incentive and how we finance that, what could you foresee for the future for Wyoming as far as filming of films and television series in Wyoming? Because I want to see that happen. I just need someone with more experience than me on this issue to kind of get me stirred up and excited about the prospect. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Salazar. Director Schober? We'd like to see
Chairman-
him excited.
Chairman Flitner and Senator Salazar, the good news is that there's been a lot of increased interest in Wyoming. Unfortunately, Charles Lammers, who is on our team and handles all of this for us, is ill as well and unable to join us today. You'll hear from some industry folks about the uptick in activity. But there's just a lot of interest in the state of Wyoming. We've had interest before without really doing any kind of marketing. And so there's the raw assets that Wyoming has, but then when you put some marketing muscle behind it and some sales activities, we believe that we can really elevate that interest and secure these productions to come to Wyoming. From the economic impact of $18 million, the state of Wyoming invested $2.1 million in total rebates for that $18 million in economic activity. And that was over the course of from 2007 through 2018 on those productions. And so there's, and as we said, 319 crew hires for wages of $9 million. And this is people who are, working in an industry that is part of a creative class. It's a way to diversify. Young people get excited about it. And certainly, Senator, I'm sure that, with your own community college right there in Fremont County, in Riverton, they have the premier program for film production and an associate's degree. And I don't know if the professor who actually leads that curriculum will be able to join us today. They just started their fall semester, and so he was unsure if he would be able to break away to join in and testify. But they have had a lot of interest from students who are in that program. We sent you all an article earlier this summer from 3 students who'd graduated out of a Wyoming high school, an alternative high school, who are headed to Central Wyoming College to start their associate's degree program in the film incentive world. And so, demand breeds supply, but yet you have to have an infrastructure in place in order to stimulate demand. And so having an incentive married with what's already out there in interest in Wyoming can certainly together work to build out this industry for Wyoming. And I will rely on others as they speak to you today to give you more excitement and inspiration as to why this might be a good thing for Wyoming.
Thank you. Representative Hunt.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, are there any in the prior lifetime of this incentive program? Are there any notable productions that can be pointed to that were filmed or worked on in Wyoming, where it can be pointed to and said that the production crew can specifically say, were it not for this incentive program, we would not have come to Wyoming?
Director Schober.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Hunt, certainly, one of the big ones that was out there was Django Unchained. I think there are a variety of other smaller productions that have benefited even from television series from Gunworks and Best of the West out of the northwest corner of Wyoming. We didn't work on a production with it, but could have had some opportunity to really build it out a little bit more with The Good Dinosaur that Disney Pixar used Wyoming as a base for all of their animated locations. And then the things that we've lost really are the ones that are driving this incentive. And when the incentive was passed in 2007, there were 2 feature films. One was written by an author out of Cody, An Unfinished Life, starring Robert Redford. And that particular production scouted in Wyoming. There was no film incentive, and they shot elsewhere. Ang Lee scouted in Wyoming 4 different times for Brokeback Mountain and shot elsewhere. We did not have a film incentive program. Those were 2 large motion pictures. And then in the most recent of times that I think most of you are familiar with, from 2 Wyoming authors, one out of Johnson County, Craig Johnson, the author of the Longmire series. We provided a lot of B-roll for them, for their backgrounds, but certainly, it was shot on location in New Mexico. And now Paramount with the Joe Pickett series are shooting on location in Canada. They scouted Wyoming. We've had a lot of really productive talks with them, but it boiled down to us not having an incentive. And so when you think of business lost, there's a lot of opportunity that had we had an incentive. I mean, it doesn't guarantee that a production would take place in Wyoming, but it certainly is almost in today's world a requirement to even get our foot in the door to be competitive.
Thank you. All right. Oh, yes, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you very much, Director. I've got I guess a statement and then a question. The first is funny how you just run into people, but I ran into a producer at a music festival in Chugwater, Wyoming, of all places, and I asked him. I said, I just want to know an honest answer. If we had a film incentive, would you guys be more apt to come to the state? And he says, we don't look at a state that doesn't. I found that interesting. I mean, he had no skin in the game. He just said, we don't even look at a state that doesn't have an incentive because it really affects our bottom line. And then so I thought, that's an interesting concept. The second, though, is I guess I'm going to go back to the funding aspect of it and ask a question, Director, of the funding aspect. I think this is the thing that scares me is, okay, so what happens if we do this and we have a ton of involvement and the funding isn't there? I mean, I think we need to almost hammer down that funding aspect a little bit better. You said there's many ways we can. I feel like there's a lot of unknowns at this point that make that kind of a scary perspective. If we offer an incentive, we got to pay on the incentive. And we also need to make sure we have a funding model that will support that pay.
Director.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Haroldson, it's always great to hear when you have conversations with folks out there in the industry and just reinforcing what we have heard and hear every day about the competitive. If you're going to be in this arena, you have to have something that's competitive. And as for the funding model, I certainly would defer to you and happy to work with all of you on where and how this funding could come forth. But before we would even be able to enter into any type of funding agreement with any company, there has to be this statutory authority and the ability to do this through legislation. And so that's what's basically the barrier today is, the Office of Tourism couldn't appropriate any funds toward any incentive today from our budget because there's not the statutory authority to do so. And so I would defer the question of the funding back to all of you and happy to be a proactive part of the conversation with you about that.
Perfect. Thank you, Director. Yes, Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chair, as a follow-up to that, so my understanding too is, say, we are able to devote however much money to the program, $1 million or $2 million, looking at past numbers. If those are exhausted, then there's just no more money for it. And I think that my understanding is there's no guarantee like that you continue to offer it if you can't pay for it. But that if we reach that point, then we would have the conversation again of, do we need to restructure our program differently? So, I appreciate us wanting to write perfect bills and have them all sorted out, but I'm just curious, but is my understanding correct? Like if we exhaust that account. You have the discretion, the way this is structured, to just tell future projects, sorry, we're out of money to do it right now.
Director.
Chairman Flitner and Co-Chairman Ellis, that's exactly right. We would be, we're also bound by contracting with amounts that are in that budget. And so only spending authority to the amount that would be available would we be allowed to enter into any contractual arrangement with a production company.
Thank you. Oh, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current thought process, if we move legislation forward, which I hope we do, with the new statewide lodging tax, the thought process is out of that budget, overall budget, that's where the funding for this would come from, and not going after general funds or any of that. It would be out of this new lodging tax pool.
Director.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Sweeney, yes, I mean, I think that's a perfect opportunity to look at those funds. It's written in the statutory language that they be used for the work of the Wyoming Office of Tourism or the Tourism Board. And that reserve account is specifically written for tourism related projects. And all of those funds, again, require spending authority through the Joint Appropriations Committee, and hence then the full body of the legislature and the governor. So you're still going through the same transparency process that you have with general funds, but it's just the revenue source is from the 3% statewide lodging tax.
Thank you. All right, we'll move along then. Director Schober, I believe our next item is other states' approaches. So it's selected U.S. states and Canada film industry incentives fact sheet. Is that where we want to go to next?
Chairman Flitner, I know that through the Legislative Service Office, and I believe that Carla is here, there was a request to review what other states are doing, and through LSO, and we had provided them with the links and the information that was there. I think it was there for your information, and if you had questions around it.
Very good. And Carla, thank you. This was tremendous work. I appreciate this. Committee, any questions for Carla? We've all had a chance to review this fact sheet. If anybody just wants to take a look at it real quick and refresh their memories. Yes, Vice Chairman Newsom.
On the New Mexico line, there is a term below the line non-residents, and I didn't see, or it wasn't clear what that means. So as you go into detail, it says terms on the New Mexico line, 25% to all crew, 15% below the line non-residents.
And Carla?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Representative Newsom. Yes, below the line is a film industry term. That means that's the production services. The above the line is, from my understanding, is it's on the budget sheet. This is where the term comes from. It's the production costs. Above the line are the script, the story writers, the producers, the directors, the actors, and the casting. So the rest of the crew and the production team are below the line. So that's what that means. Does that answer?
Thank you, Carla. Committee, further questions? Okay, thank you. And again, yes, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question, after looking through all of the different states and Canada, I just kind of wondered, and I don't know if Director Schober or which one of you could maybe answer this, but how does our incentive now fit in with some of these other states? I realize New Mexico is kind of ahead of the game, and British Columbia, but in terms of Idaho, Montana, Utah, some of the others that were mentioned, how would this new incentive fit in terms of fairness or equity with some of the other states?
Director Schober.
Chairman Flitner and Senator Schuler. So, what really, it's difficult to compare apples to apples. As you know, you all as legislators, I know, look at tax structures of states across the US. And so, sometimes it's hard to make a comparison because there are state income taxes or employee taxes. This particular incentive is input from the production industry that they believe would be the best for Wyoming to be competitive. And that's why we're proposing the rebate on qualified expenditures. And so within that realm, we're taking our cue from the end users who would actually be pursuing and reviewing incentives and have built our proposed recommendations based on the input from those production companies and other scouts.
Thank you. Yes, Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chair, as a follow-up to that, I know New Mexico has labor laws, which are a lot different than Wyoming's. Do you think that that could be, from your involvement with the working group, is that a factor, something that's maybe not captured in the actual incentive itself, but maybe Wyoming has labor laws that are more favorable in the eyes of these production companies?
Director.
Chairman Flitner and Co-Chairman Ellis, yes, and certainly from the union standpoint and the ability to highlight and use that to our advantage. And so I think there's been a lot of, as I understand it, out in that film industry world and production industry, that the unionization has been a big conversation. Wyoming could stand to play that to our advantage.
Good question. All right, committee, I don't see any hands online. Very good. Thank you, Director. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chairman
No, not
Flitner.
at all.
I don't know how well this will work, but you all had brought up at a prior meeting about what is this connection with tourism and tourism marketing and the value of productions, and certainly even what happens in a post-production when a film is shot, and how do we continue to have value from those particular items. And many of us who are of my age and older would remember Shane as one of the greatest, and the line of Shane, come back, is iconic. Younger people don't have any idea what we're talking about, but I know in Utah just earlier this summer, they did a big celebration in Southern Utah around the 30th anniversary of the release of the film Thelma and Louise, and we're driving big celebrations. And I have two videos here. One I wanted to show you is with Joe Alves. Joe Alves was the production supervisor working with Steven Spielberg on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And on the 40th anniversary of that release, we did a big promotion through the Office of Tourism. And as always, every year when it shows up on TV as reruns or other things, we get a lot of inquiries. The folks at the KOA campground at Devil's Tower play it every night on an outdoor screen for the audiences there. I want to show you that. And then there's another one that was just really a sweet story. It was a Disney Pixar film called The Good Dinosaur. And in The Good Dinosaur, obviously, it's an animated feature. It's about a young dinosaur whose homeland is the Sawtooth Mountains. But when you see it, you would recognize that Wyoming was definitely the inspiration of that particular animation and the illustrations for that particular feature film. The other thing that was really important about this, in a partnership that we entered into with Disney Pixar, was their connection to the Wyoming Dinosaur Center in Thermopolis, Wyoming. And Disney does not include sponsorship partners with any of their follow-up and redistribution once a film is released. This was an exception. And I'm going to start with this one because the paleontologist that's there is engaging, and I want you to see him. And then if this works well through sharing the screen through Zoom, I'll show you the other one with Joe Alves. They're both very short videos, but if I may indulge you, Chairman Flitner and members of the committee, I'd love to show you these particular videos that we've used.
Sure, please proceed.
Sometimes not everything works the way you want it to. Can you all see, do you all see a screen of YouTube? Okay. Um, Chairman Flitner and members of the committee, I'm hearing that there's no audio, that you're not able to hear the audio.
That is correct, Director Schober, but I think
Okay,
our-
so
well, our
I think,
PBS I think our PBS crew are going to try to play audio from their equipment. They're working on that right now.
yeah, and I know that, you know, we were talking about this morning, and I apologize without being there. It has made it a little bit more difficult in trying to adapt to how we can do this. Maybe what we would do is, in order just to be respectful of your time, Chairman Flitner, members of the committee, is to go on to the other comments around the film incentive. And then we can come back if our friends at PBS can get either the Good Dino or the Joe Alves story up so you can see those.
Okay.
At the very minimum, I'm going to send you all a link so that you can watch them on your own computers, because they're both really, really great stories, and I know you'll enjoy them.
Okay, just so you know, it worked yesterday. And so, yeah, Mr. Brody is having heartburn, but we know it worked yesterday. So.
Technology, right?
Right. Okay, so committee, we'll hold off on that for now unless you guys have, no, okay, they're shrugging their shoulders. So let's move on to, if you don't mind, Mr. Brody, the constitutionality piece. Are you ready to present that at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I certainly can.
All right, floor is yours.
Bear with me for 1 second. I was dealing
It's
with
all
my
right.
other heartburn.
We know you're jumping around the room. We appreciate it.
Okay, so Madam Chairman, members of the committee, John Brody, Legislative Service Office. There was a discussion at the conclusion of the last TRW meeting with respect to a document that was provided by the Board of Tourism, Tourism Office, that kind of highlighted some of the sort of constitutional concerns that should be addressed as part of a film incentive program. Mainly that document that was provided indicated that the program that's created would need to serve a public purpose and that it would have to have adequate consideration. Based on that document, LSO kind of went back and tried to find any research we had that kind of substantiated that. We were able to find some research from years ago, but upon the request of the chairman, we kind of redid the research and generated the memo that's in your materials.
Very good. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair or Madam Chair. I want to thank LSO. We did find some old memos that were written in like 2006, and they were all very narrowly, I thought, in my view, geared toward the prior film incentive program. And so I did ask LSO to make sure that all the citations that were included in that memo were still current law, that nothing had been changed significantly to alter the analysis, but asked them to step back a little bit to allow, knowing that the working group was talking about maybe having 2 tiers. So having just kind of a more broadly worded memo that, we could look at. So I just want to thank them. I know they had a quick turnaround time in looking at that. So thank you, John. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Chairman Ellis. It's always beneficial to have a lawyer on the committee. So we appreciate that ask. Go ahead, Mr. Brody.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I guess I won't get in too much of the weeds. The memo is fairly brief, and I'd like to think it's fairly straightforward. But I guess in a general sense, the memo just basically conforms to what the Office of Tourism indicated through that document that was previously provided. You're going to need to show that any program that you're going to create is for a public purpose. One of the things that this committee should keep in mind, or the legislature in general should keep in mind, is that the public purpose, while courts will generally defer to the legislature when it comes to defining what a public purpose is, it's not a defined term. That public purpose cannot be sort of a subsidiary of a larger purpose that only benefits private industry. So I guess the piece of advice I would offer is that you can't have the bill offered for supporting private industry under the guise that it has a public purpose. The public purpose has to be more than incidental. Now, what that means, that's certainly, that's up to the legislature. That's kind of a weigh the pros and the cons, and kind of try to figure out what is the best for the public good. But generally, in my review of the case law, courts will defer to the legislature unless it is just apparent that a piece of legislation isn't for the public purpose.
Very good. Vice Chairman Newsom and then Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would argue that this film incentive is no different than buying an ad in a magazine. We're paying money to support the state of Wyoming, to support the promotion of the state of Wyoming. And that would, in my mind, be the public purpose of this particular piece of legislation, should it go forward. So in my mind, there is no doubt that there is public purpose that goes with this piece of legislation, just like other forms of advertising that we do to promote the state. Thank you.
Mr. Brody, do you have a comment?
Madam Chairman, I would just kind of echo what Representative Newsom stated. If you look on page 2 of the memo, just sort of hypothetical scenarios I offer. I mean, one of the public benefits is going to be economic development for the state. So it's been commented on by Director Schober, but you're going to have increase in sales use taxes. You could have a potential increase in lodging taxes. There could be second order effects where you're raising the profile of the state through our tourism economy, through our visitor economy, and then through maybe a newly established, film production economy. So certainly I think there are opportunities for public purpose for sure.
Very good. Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Mr. Brody, thank you. I really appreciated your brief. My question, you partially just answered, but is there any advice you can give us or any thoughts you might have with how we would structure a bill that would carry itself well into the courts later on if there ever was a challenge? Is there something we can do within the bill itself or within the eventual statute that would spell out the intention of the committee and the legislature?
Mr. Brody.
Madam Chairman, Senator Landon, certainly I think the substance of the bill is ultimately what will carry the day with any court that's going to review potential legislation for constitutional problems. However, courts will look to legislative intent in certain circumstances, and it can be advantageous I mean, it's depending on the will of this body and the will of the legislature to include legislative findings at the beginning of the legislation, where you can kind of identify, you know, the issues that are present and what this piece of legislation is trying to accomplish for the general good.
Yes, follow up,
Just
Senator.
a quick follow-up comment, Madam Chairman, that's exactly where I was headed with that. And in the Senate, we often find, particularly from some of the veterans, that findings are not, they're not enamored with findings, but in this particular case, it might be worth the committee considering that, just to kind of cover the backside with regard to constitutionality.
Good suggestion. Yes. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, you know, one way to achieve that is to actually put your findings in the statute in order to XYZ promote, you know, whatever our public purpose is. This article shall, and then you start laying it out. So I think there's a way to weave it in without being separate in its own finding section, because the Senate really does have a distaste for those.
Committee, further questions? Very good. I don't see anybody online. So thank you, Mr. Brody. Appreciate it. And again, thank you both, you and Carla, for your
Madam Chairman,
extensive research.
if I may just
Yes,
kind of bookend this a bit. I just want to make clear that, you know, just because it's a public purpose doesn't mean that the bill is good or the program is constitutional. Everything that kind of guides Wyoming law through our Constitution, you can't satisfy one provision of the Constitution and somehow be compliant with another. So the second part of the memo kind of speaks to, while you have to have a public purpose, you also, through our Constitution, cannot be lending the credit of the state or providing public money for charity or donations. So that's when the discussion regarding adequate consideration comes in. This has to be, you know, an arm's length transaction with any film production company that would come in, and the state would need to get adequate return on their investment in order to be constitutionally compliant. But without it, I won't have any more other than that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, committee, no further questions. Director Schober, do you have any further comments?
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, I don't at this point, and I think you'll hear more when you go to the public comment section.
Very
Thank
good.
you for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Director, and we hope you get to feeling better, and we hope that your symptoms, this is as bad as they get.
All right, thank you.
So committee, what's your pleasure? Well, we've got one more. Are we doing the visitation Wyoming Capitol? That's also, and then public comments after that. So are we going to address that?
I think you can do whatever you want. If we did this, if we did some public comment on this, then we can see if there's.
Okay, all right. Then we'll move to public comment. So please, anybody in the room, step forward and address the committee. Welcome. They're scared.
Madam Chairman.
Representative Sweeney.
On public comment, I'd just like to have the tourism board, Diane's, to at least waive that they came and are.
They've waived, Director Schober, but they are afraid to talk to us. So no, we have one. Okay, come up, brave soul. Please address yourself or introduce yourself rather, and the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, thank you for having us.
It'll turn green on you, so give it a moment. Press that button.
Now we're green. Oh, excuse me. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having me. My name is Sean Parker. I'm the newest member of the Wyoming Office of Tourism Board, so I've been given the longest speech. I am also the executive director of Sheridan Travel and Tourism. I would like to echo what we've heard here this morning. A film incentive is really a foot in the door for any state seriously interested in film on a scale that can make a positive economic impact. I've represented Sheridan myself in the Wyoming Office of Tourism at film industry conferences and location scouting events over the years. And for studios and large production companies, the conversation always begins with what is Wyoming's incentive? And unfortunately, that's typically where the conversation ends. I remember one event we were at in 2018 when the last FIFI incentive had about $38,000 left in the coffers, and folks would come over. We had Bruce Moriarty with us, who's been the first assistant director on a lot of small projects like Forrest Gump and Batman versus Superman and Casino Royale and some really tiny stuff. And he brought a few gentlemen over from the industry who were very well known, and it caused quite a stir at the Wyoming booth. And that stir was all we got because we had no incentive. So we had no more conversation, which is really unfortunate. But it's not to suggest that these companies are not interested in filming in our state. In Sheridan alone, we've had success with our own small film program that we instituted in 2016. We filmed national ad campaigns for Rolls-Royce. 3 years ago, we had Delta Airlines film a campaign that saw the production team spend dollars in Sheridan, Johnson, Bighorn, and Park counties. This weekend, my team is filming a series of commercials for the next Walking Dead video game in Sheridan, which makes me laugh, but I think it's pretty amazing. 2 weeks ago, a production house from Florida came to Sheridan to film a modestly budgeted horror film. And earlier this summer, we assisted Netflix with a shoot for the best bars in the world. It's a show that's going to debut next year. If you've ever been to the Mint Bar, you understand why they decided on that one. Each of these represents a small victory for our community. But for each of those wins, we've lost out on many, many other projects that could have made a substantial economic impact for this state. I've hosted Allison Eastwood, the daughter of Clint Eastwood, World Wrestling Entertainment, and location scouts from many production companies that would love to shoot in Wyoming, but end up turning to New Mexico, Georgia, or Louisiana based on the strength of the local incentives. As a Canadian by birth, I'm proud to see, the industry do really well up there, but I'd really like to steal some of that stuff back for Wyoming. I believe that in the audience today, we have a Johnson County Commissioner who might remember that back in 2018, I asked the commission for permission to scuba dive in Lake DeSmet in order to scout a location for a Jeep commercial when they were looking to show off an amphibious vehicle that they were working on. We lost that one because of the lack of incentive. We went all the way down the pipe, and without the incentive, we couldn't go any further. And I found out how cold Wyoming lakes are at 50 feet below the surface. And the answer is cold. And to be competitive, honestly, wrapping up, to be competitive not only regionally, but nationally, a Wyoming film incentive is the first step in generating significant revenue for Wyoming's economy. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, thank you. I appreciate your comments. Could you tell us a little bit more about your Sheridan program? When was it established and how is it funded?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Our program was established in 2016. We had the help of, at the time, Senator Kinski, and our board president was understood that there was a lot of revenue to be tapped into on the film side of things. So mostly it was modeled after what the state was doing, small scale promotion to encourage film programs to come and film with us. I have a background in film. I did some very bad screenwriting and production work in my early 20s, and I have a full-time production coordinator who worked in Taiwan as a professional filmmaker for many years. So between the two of us, we did everything that we could to attract these sort of smaller productions. So we focus specifically on commercials. That's why we've been lucky to get Delta and Rolls-Royce and a few other places. But most of that is based on contacts from our previous work life. It's very, very difficult to attract anything larger without that incentive.
But did you provide an incentive? Did Sheridan County provide that?
No, we provided no incentive. That's the tough part. We can get these one-offs here and there if somebody's going to spend, $100,000, $50,000, but to tap into 500 plus, $1 million plus without an incentive, we can't get them.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Committee,
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Parker? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Parker, thank you for your comments this morning, and thanks for serving on the commission. My question, and we're going to run into this, if we move forward with a reconsideration of this kind of program, one of the first things we will hear is, well, what's the return on investment? Can you give us some idea of what Sheridan County has invested and what you've gotten back out of that? Can you give us a ballpark?
Mr. Parker.
Certainly. Madam Chair and Senator Landon, I can give you a few specific examples. Our budget for our small film program is about $75,000 a year. That covers equipment, our own production, and our staff of one, formerly 1.5. And one good example on return would be when Rolls-Royce came to shoot that campaign, they spent $350,000 in a week. When Netflix came to shoot the Best Bars in America program, that was over a 3-day period, and they spent upwards of $100,000. And I would remind everybody that we're not giving them any money. They're coming to visit based on the strength of what Wyoming has to offer. So the return is quite substantial, even on these tiny little projects, which is to say nothing of the incredible marketing value that we see when these projects come to fruition.
Senator, follow up?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions online? Not seeing any. Mr. Parker, thank you.
Real quick.
Oh, yes, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman. And I guess a quick question, and I'm not trying to pour dirt in the water, but I am going to pour dirt in the water. Looking
what he
across, looking across the board, we do have rebates, grants, or tax credits. Can you talk to your opinion on what would be maybe more bang for the buck, what these incentive programs, what they're looking for? Are they looking for tax credit, or are they looking for rebate grant concepts? Just can you talk to that? Because I know these are decisions that need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parker.
Madam Chair and Representative Haroldson, that's a great question, and that is a difficult answer. It depends on the production company. If we were lucky to land Batman 55 and Warner Brothers decided to come here and shoot, and we're going to spend $200 million, they're going to be looking for a rebate, I would guess. If it's a smaller scale production looking at a TV show, maybe that's just a credit. It really depends on the production size, and some research will have to go into at which Charles Lammers at the Wyoming Office of Tourism would have been the best person to answer this one. It's tough because it is case by case, but there doesn't necessarily have to be a one size fits all. There are ways to structure a incentive that maybe fills all the gaps.
Follow up, sure.
Thank you. And that, I mean, I understand. I asked it because it is a tough question. But New Mexico currently is on a tax credit basis, which obviously it sounds like that's kind of our pinnacle that everyone's talking about. So it's interesting that they chose a tax credit over a refund, and yet they seem to pull hard for grabbing these larger titles. So anyways, just I guess more things to think about. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, with regard to New Mexico, how much activity did they see prior to the production or the building of those production facilities within the state?
Madam Chair, I don't have any numbers in front of me, but it was fairly minimal. I think it really took off when AMC, which was owned by Fox at the time, decided that this is where we'd like to spend a lot of our dollars. So a lot of money went into the production of those stages. And with the success of things like Breaking Bad, and of course, the one that we fixate on here, Longmire, being ripped from our hearts and filmed down in New Mexico, that things really skyrocketed. But before that, it was fairly minimal because they didn't have two things: locations, stages, or an incentive.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And do you feel like at this time, would this bring about somebody wanting to come to the state to build a production facility? I mean, would this be necessary? I'm just wondering why they wouldn't already do that. Is it all dependent upon whatever they might get back for a return?
Madam Chair, absolutely. Okay. Without an incentive, no one would take a risk to build a sizable stage, because the only, and a series of stages, the only way you fill those sort of location assets is with a company willing to come here and make a film or a show. And without an incentive, you can't attract them.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Committee, further questions for Mr. Parker?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Representative Banks.
I don't know that I have a question so much, maybe just more of a comment, and sort of following up on Representative Harrelson's earlier comments, that I look at this sort of like what the Wyoming Business Council does when we're trying to recruit a business, because I do some of that economic development work here. The first question always out of those businesses' mouth is, what kind of incentives do you have? And, you know, we often don't have those. And the same is true here. And so I think this is no different than the way we're trying to recruit businesses to the state, is trying to find what incentives work to attract those businesses to locate here, and in this case, to attract those production companies to film here. So to me, this is really sort of hand in hand with what we're doing with the Business Council and its. So
Thank you. And Representative Banks, if you could turn up your volume or move your microphone a little closer to you. We're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you, but very good. Thank you for your comments. Committee, yes, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So to the Tourism Board, with the new statewide lodging tax, is the board's opinion driving the policy to the Division of Tourism to carry out? Is it your opinion on looking out into the future that the money will be there out of the lodging tax to fuel this program?
Mr. Parker.
Madam Chair and Representative Sweeney, I think from the Wyoming Office of Tourism Board perspective, we have all been extremely happy to see the revenue numbers that we've seen come in on that statewide lodging tax so far. At our meeting yesterday, we were presented with some financials and saw that we are overshooting projections by 21% currently, which means that 80-20 split, 80-20 in the operating fund for the Wyoming Office of Tourism, and then that 20% for special projects will have certainly enough to fund something like a film incentive program.
So Mr. Parker or Director Schober, could you provide us with those current financials off the top of your head, or Director Schober?
I'm happy to do so. If you'll give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
My filing system is on the floor here next to the chair. So let me reach into my filing cabinet.
I get it. Move the cat or whatever.
And Chairman Flitner and members of the board, these documents are all on the Wyoming Department of Revenue website. When you look at the aggregated tax distributions to date, which reflects only from 6 months versus 7 months of collections, there's $8,281,000 in the operating account, which is the 80% fund that goes toward the operation of the Wyoming Office of Tourism. In the Tourism Project and Reserve account, to date on that same 6 month of collections, $2,070,000. Projections are based on fiscal year 19 numbers. Without this accelerated growth that our board member, Mr. Parker, referred to, we were anticipating that there would be 15.7 million on a 12-month collection in the operating fund and 3.9 million in the reserve fund. But fortunately, and we'll take some of the credit for it, from a really good tourism season, and the other credit goes to our partners across the state of Wyoming. We're having a really great year. 21 is a nice rebound season, and everything that we're doing, we're comparing all numbers against fiscal year 19. That was the last full year of a comprehensive, solid tourism season prior to COVID. And so those are your amounts pacing as of today. And again, all on the Wyoming Department of Revenue's tax distribution reports on their site.
Okay, thank you, Director. I appreciate it. Committee, thank you. And Mr. Parker, thank you for taking the time to be here, and everybody else. And thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Knapp has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be for Mr. Parker and Director Schober. Going back to public purpose, is there any mechanism right now that we use to track visitors specifically, or ask the question, what drove them to Wyoming, whether it was a film or documentary? Is there any record in the past incentive program or currently?
Director Schober.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Knapp, there's not a question that has been asked specifically about that, but we do have digital activity based on film releases, words that people search, Devil's Tower, Close Encounters, those types of things. And we see that uptick in and around what might be out there in mainstream media around a film, and then the connection to Wyoming. And so while we don't have the direct questions as you referred, we definitely see the interest and the peaking on organic word searches. And then when we do paid media, we often look at one of many metrics, but the engagement with that paid media around that film, such as The Good Dinosaur or the re-release of Close Encounters, but also like with Django and many others too. We're looking at how those are playing out, even on with CJ Box's books, Big Sky. There it's playing on ABC right now. There's been an increase in activity around Wyoming, although that was based in Montana, but people start to look at the West. And so, we definitely know and see what people are searching for online.
Thank you. Representative Knapp, did you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Parker, thank you. Further public comment? Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Brett Hills, I'm with Teton Gravity Research in Jackson Hole. With our absentee members today, I've been volunteered or asked to lead the public comment from the working committee. We've had some great meetings with all the people across the state, and I'd like to thank everyone here for their time today. Just a quick overview of what the public comment section will look like from the working committee. We've got 4 people that will be speaking to you today as planned, and then there might be some ad hoc ones as well. Sean Patrick Higgins. Sean's a Sheridan-based producer, actor, director, and writer, so a busy man. He's here to share a big picture overview of the marketing opportunity for Wyoming. He's got an excellent presentation for you. Myself, Brett Hills, I'm the CFO of Teton Gravity Research, amongst other things. And I'm going to provide some of the real factors that our robust film industry represents in our state, and how that affects our company and our business. And I've got a lot of on-ground experience over 9 years of doing the film production company. Kelly Eastus, if I've pronounced that correctly. He's with the Film Office Liaison with Visit Casper and Director of Development for Impact Wyoming. He'll share his experience as location scout in Wyoming and touch base on the study of economic impact from a 1997 feature film that featured Wyoming, which I do not know what that is, but look forward to hearing about it. And finally, my good friend, Kate Wiltshire from Turtle Ranch here in DuBois. She'll be here to speak about the economic impact of a meaningful film industry at a local level, what it means for her ranch, the local spend by productions into her business, and all the, she's got the exciting stories to tell today from my point of view. So I look forward to hearing from Kate. But thank you, Madam Chairman, for introducing the public comment. And I think we'll hand over to Sean Patrick Higgins on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hills. Mr. Higgins?
Yes, thank you, Chairman and committee. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a PowerPoint. Really pleased to be with you all today. I'm a graduate of UW in 2013 and excited to present on this market opportunity. So what I want to bring to our attention is that right now, Wyoming performs 48 out of 48 in the contiguous United States for the film industry. Here you can see the graph. Numbers on the left are in billions of dollars. Towards the left, we've got California and New York that lead the industry. All the way down, if we walk it to 48, you'll see Wyoming in a little box. We're tied with Vermont for a lot of the same services. The average film economic spend in wages per state is $840 million and 12,000 jobs created. If Wyoming were to introduce an incentive, we would jump to about 40th. These numbers are provided to us by a market analyst who's with Morgan Stanley Data Research, Vice President in Manhattan. And so if we look at moving from 48th to just 40th, that would mean that we'd create a $60 million per year industry, and we'd create about 1,200 new jobs in the film industry. What this means, you'll see on the right, there's a little peer study group that we've created. Wyoming is red. Red is in stop or do not go. That goes back to the film incentive conversations that Sean Parker was discussing. You can see then a quick snapshot of the other incentives that surround. Our peer group has excluded Colorado because they do 1.3 billion per year in film production and film spend into the state. So we're really looking at Montana, Idaho, Utah, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and Oklahoma and New Mexico. You'll see that Oklahoma is at 37%. That's where a lot of the film industry is going right now. We know that New Mexico and Montana have pretty comprehensive incentive programs and rebate programs. So quick snapshot, states with incentives create 4 times more wages per year for residents. And states with incentives create 3 times more industry related jobs per year. The bar graphs on the left have excluded California and New York because again, they're just billions in front of everyone else as far as the market goes. So they skew the data. The Wyoming Film Pipeline. These numbers are studied from the Bureau of Labor Services as well as the Motion Pictures Organization. Industry production spend is about 65 billion per year. You heard one of our committee members mention the above the line and the below the line spend earlier today. We're going to get into that a little bit. Above the line is about 44% of any given budget. That's that top tier talent. Those are the Harrison Fords, the Scorseses of the world. 56% is below the line spend. Of that 56%, you have about 16 that goes into direct wages. Those are local jobs, local crew, direct wages for below the line. Then you have 40%. That goes into locations and equipment and per diem, hotels, et cetera, supporting ancillary businesses. Right now, based on our peer group, we've included New Zealand and Calgary, Canada. There's about 10 to 15% of the total film production shot every year in our peer group when we grow to Calgary and New Mexico, Calgary and New Zealand as well. So if we take the bottom bumper of that, just 10%, we're looking at a $2.6 billion potential industry. Now you can see the bumper at the bottom. A comprehensive tax incentive program would make us competitive for that $2.6 billion industry, but it doesn't guarantee that these films are coming here. What it does is it gets our foot in the door, like we've been saying, and a lot of the other folks who have spoken today. This, again, the Bureau of Labor Services data shows Colorado at 1.3 billion per year. So this is the opportunity, and that's our neighboring state. There's been a lot of conversation about infrastructure, and 3 of the things that we need is the incentive, then we need the sound stages, the actual buildings to shoot in, and we need local crew and local training. My company, Storyhouse Film Studios, is poised right now, if we were to do this with private equity funding, to bring a soundstage complex to Wyoming. Like I said before, native son of Wyoming, grew up between here and California, went to school here. My 3 siblings went to UW as well. We would create a state-of-the-art film studio and soundstage complex. We know that we could create between 400 and 700 jobs, full-time equivalent jobs, diversifying Wyoming's economy. We would provide educational and vocational training opportunities to Wyoming residents, bolster things like the Wyoming Film Institute, or work with local community colleges to create a conservatory program that could be accredited through those colleges or the community college. We would retain youth and workforce. I think this is an important one for Wyoming. We would grow and impact the tourism industry. As you've seen, and as we're speaking here today, there's a huge direct correlation to tourism. Personally, I would target a goal of hiring 25% veterans and displaced energy workers. There's a lot of analogous skills. About 80% of the workers for Silver Cup Studios in New York City are old dock workers and sort of Long Island families. So, you know, if you're a welder on a oil rig, or if you're an electrician in a mine or whatnot, we need those people. And it's really complementary skill sets. And then we could create a direct economic spend in Wyoming of $100 million plus per year once we reach maturity. And this is what the market is telling us. And lastly, we would guide stories that Wyoming would be proud of. That's something that I would like to see, and something like we've talked about Shane. There is a couple different series that are shooting up in Calgary, Billy the Kid. There's a new feature film in works with Paramount right now from the author of The Revenant. The Revenant didn't shoot here, as you know, it shot in Canada, but that story is based in Wyoming. That's in production right now or heading into pre-production. So these are opportunities that we could create. These full-time equivalent salaries would range between $42,000 a year and $150,000 a year for a single project. We'd be looking to create 10 to 14 projects per year at our maturity. And additionally, any part-time equivalent employees would reach full-time equivalent status with just 3 projects per year. Some letters of support from the industry. You all are familiar with CJ Box. These are just to show that this is not a field of dreams scenario. If we do bring this incentive and we do bring some soundstage, some infrastructure, these folks will come. CJ Box has 2 series right now. We've been talking about them a lot today. The Joe Pickett series has a direct local spend of $5.9 million per year into Canada right now. They create 120 full-time equivalent local jobs just on that series. Big Sky, which just relocated in July from Vancouver to full-time now in New Mexico, creates 500 full-time equivalent jobs per year. Doug Mankoff, who's the president of Echo Lake Entertainment. He's the president of development and production down there. He's a dear friend. He's willing to bring some of his series here if we were able to greenlight this. Unified Bond Company is out of LA. They bond major feature films through Sony and others. They like the idea of it. You can see there are some of their things that they're asking for: the sound stages, the professionally trained crew and film liaisons for hire, location scouts, etc. And then accessible airports is an important one. So that would guide our decision on where we put our first foothold. Additionally, we have Brooklyn Oz Productions. It's a New York and Australian-based company. Media Finance Structures, run by John Zabel. He used to be the vice president of Sony, the vice president of Mandalay Pictures, and he worked at Columbia Pictures for a while as well. And then we have James Brown III, no relation to James Brown, as you all would know him, but he's a film writer and also a producer down in LA. He's very excited about this prospect. So what we're looking at is about a 1,200 new full-time equivalent job potential as we grow this industry over 5 years. If we keep going, this is the New Mexico studied numbers. You've seen this, it sounds like, in a packet you all had before. Just want to call attention to the direct spend into the New Mexico economy. You know, they're looking at about an average of 275 million per year. They've been at it a little longer than all of us, but they didn't get there overnight. So we got to start somewhere. Last year, there was 167 film production inquiries into the state of Wyoming. Charles Lammers has those numbers. He's with Wyoming Tourism, as we know. So these are opportunities that we missed. COVID created this beautiful silver lining, and you'll see that most of those productions went to Oklahoma. Oklahoma jumped in 2020 from a direct economic spend of 32 million per year to 162 million per year. A lot of that is directly related to their incentive program and to productions shuttering in LA and New York, the expense of COVID insurance, the cost to travel to Canada or New Zealand and quarantine a crew. They're looking to go and to keep a lot of these productions in the United States. So this is our, moment of opportunity, so to speak. They're also creating 10,000 jobs per year in Oklahoma right now. They started their film incentive program around 2013. It really got traction in 2015. You can see where they stair-stepped it up over 6 years. There's a case study from Calgary. Right now, Calgary, they are full. They're completely booked through 2023. And when folks in the industry, producers, talk about filming in Wyoming, the first place they look is Calgary, Canada. There's a lot of similar landscape. We know that there's an opportunity right now because 95% of the sound stages are at capacity internationally. And Calgary, as our sister, as far as the industry goes, they've seen a really strong boom since they introduced their film incentive program a couple years ago. And then, of course, we have Montana. It's just a bit of a broader impact. This is brought from the Montana Film Commission website. It's showing their main impacts, right? Tourism, the arts and culture, and then capital investment. These companies, as mentioned before, would be spending CapEx dollars in the state if they were to create their own sound stages. If not, they're bringing jobs and local crew hires to Wyoming. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and release the sharing of the screen, but I'm happy to entertain any questions, Madam Chairman, and from the committee.
Mr. Higgins, thank you. You make UW proud. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, I appreciate all the information. It's quite a nice bit of information you passed on to us. I appreciate it, all your work. The big question I guess I had, because you talked about it quite a bit, do you believe that the infrastructure incentive add-on should be a part of our program? Is that something that you feel pretty strongly about?
It's a great question. I actually believe that it should not be part of the program. I believe that incentivizes outside production companies and big conglomerates to come in, put these buildings up, and then to benefit all the spend. And those aren't necessarily Wyoming dollars then, they aren't Wyoming jobs. I would encourage us, folks like myself and others who want to get into this playpen, to capture this business by Wyoming for Wyoming. There's a very real opportunity here. My team and I have surrounded it. We're ready to action this plan, so to speak. And if we keep that incentive, or we grow that incentive as part of this bill, we're going to invite outside industry to come that's already going to come. So my goal would be create these jobs by Wyoming residents. If folks want to relocate here and bring their industry here, great. Not so keen on having Netflix or Amazon own the studio, because then those dollars aren't flowing back into Wyoming quite the same way.
Thank you. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Has there been, is there a movement, or is there a direction in the industry at all towards increased success and prominence of some of these smaller independent studios? I mean, sort of kind of in a way of that you've seen in the last 20 years, the rise of independent breweries, for example. It seems to be that, just as a casual observer and occasional film buff, that there's an increasingly large number of quote unquote independent films that are receiving a lot of attention. And is that true in your estimation?
Mr. Higgins.
Thank you so much for your question, Representative Hunt and Madam Chairman. Yes, I think that right now what we're experiencing is the streaming boom in some ways. It's been a great leveling playing field. As far as production and risk management goes, anything on a platform through streaming has a guaranteed return. So then what we're seeing is a lot more content production, which gives a lot more opportunity to smaller independent filmmakers, or folks starting out, such as myself, so to speak. All of a sudden you can land your project on Netflix or on Amazon, on Hulu, and it gives you a platform then to create your next. This content war or content boom, so to speak, is that opportunity that we're seeing in the market. As Netflix goes to town with Paramount, goes to town with HBO, the consumption of content is, it's a pipeline that's not drying up anytime soon. Our analysts are saying 8 to 12 years, we're going to experience this boom. And then there should be some folks emerge like Disney Plus, probably across the top, as they eat the other smaller companies. But we could position ourselves really well to capture this pipeline, just like Montana's done and some other states. New Mexico revitalized their film credits, film rebates program, which is why there's a lot of companies moving back to New Mexico right now. This is the opportunity that exists. And just really quickly, I want to go into a question that came up earlier from, I believe it was Representative Sweeney. This question about the film fund that's been circulating. I think what Wyoming tourism is offering is a really great foot in the door. And I applaud Diane and everyone's hard work to figure out how to get this program started, this initiative started. I also think that once we have film dollars and economic impact and spend coming into the state from what this film incentive will ignite, we can put together a team of Wyoming thinkers Wyoming financial officials and whatnot, and legislators to create new taxes on new spend and new economic industry, capturing sort of like the tourism tax is captured, just a small section of this new fund coming into the state. And we could create a self-sustaining program that way in the film fund. Again, the opportunity is to do it by Wyoming for Wyoming. And with the right thinkers surrounding it, we could grow that film fund over the number of years, right? So that in 5 years' time, we could be competitive for some of those $200 million Batman films that Mr. Parker was referencing. So getting started is the biggest challenge. And once we get started, there's a lot of ways to grow this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Higgins, I really like your comment about Wyoming jobs, because that's what's really important. You know, we're facing a very difficult financial situation in Wyoming right now. And I guess the bottom line is, if this committee were to come forward with a bill and put it before the state legislature, as one of my colleagues said, the number one question is, are we going to get our money back and then more? And your presentation says to me that we will, correct?
Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Senator Salazar and Madam Chairman. Yes, just right now, my company alone would have an economic impact of over $100 million in the first 6 years. That's direct wages and CapEx spend. So when you expand that to other companies that will come or other productions that will come, those are just in wages paid to Wyoming, CapEx spent into Wyoming for infrastructure and real estate development. So if we were to green light this, that's just a small sliver of what's possible. As this industry grows, we can look at those direct economic impact numbers from the other states and see that New Mexico and Oklahoma, you know, Oklahoma has 160 million per year right now as of 2021. New Mexico averages about 275 million per year in that industry. This is a huge industry that if we position ourselves correctly for, we're gonna, that return on investment that we've been talking about, the number of X's markup, you know, we're looking well over a 12X investment. And again, the ceiling is really, sky's the limit, is we just want to protect it. And we don't want, in my perspective, we want to make sure that we're bringing the stories here that we're going to be proud of, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Appreciate your comments. Yes, and committee, I'd remind you to just keep with our timeline, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick question. Thank you for coming, Mr. Higgins. Phenomenal presentation. I love what you're doing. I love that you want to come back into the state and do this. I'm going to ask the same question. Tax credits or rebates, now that we actually have someone who would be directly affected by this, what is going to be bang for the buck, our best option moving forward? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
It's a great question. Rebates. Quantifiably, that's what's going to bring the film industry and productions here. The credits program is fraught. Wyoming doesn't have a lot of taxes to begin with, so we'd have to create taxes in order to create a credit program, which seems the long way around the barn. Rebates are really going to be the most beneficial, and the states that have rebates perform much better than credits. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. We appreciate your time and your comments. So next on your agenda.
Madam Chair, I will try to keep this short and sweet, but I think my presentation today is about what's happening right now, like what is happening in the Wyoming film industry. And you know, as I mentioned, I'm Brett Hills. I'm the CFO of Teton Gravity Research, TGR. Do people know TGR or the company? And hopefully I can share a lot of information that you may not know, being in the role I have as a CFO, COO, president, and executive producer in the film industry space. And you may ask why a guy with a strange accent sitting in front of you today. And a lot of us are talking about numbers, but I'm probably a long-term product of the film industry. I came here in 2005 as a cowboy and horse wrangler on Kate's Ranch. I came to visit for a week, and they had a 3-month Wells Fargo commercial shoot that they asked me to work on. That was my introduction to the Wyoming film industry. And, here I am 16 years later, helping to grow it through my own business and my own company. So that's how I got here, and a bit of my background. Just one thing about Teton Gravity Research, it was based here, but it was started in 1996, and its mission is to inspire. And I just want to leave that line there as I go into my presentation. So I'm going to talk about 3 things and keep it relatively short and sweet. The first thing I'm going to talk about is, what's a successful Wyoming production company look like, and what's it involve? And we are a real live case right now. I love Sean's numbers. We want to get up to those numbers, but we're here right now actually, impacting the state with what we do. I'd like to talk about how a film production incentive program assists a company like TGR in real life examples, and then how does that actually drive economic growth and impact. I've got real examples of that. And then some of the more exciting stuff is, what are the real life opportunities? We talk about all these films that potentially could come here, and I've got some we've converted and some we haven't, and I just want to share them with you so you can see the breadth of what we do. So TGR, it was started 26 years ago by 4 ski bums who had a dream and a passion for the film industry. It's now created over 50 feature films. It's got hundreds of hours of TV content, digital content, and social content. And this is everything from an HBO feature to a Wyoming, Office of Tourism commercial. It's been nominated for Emmys. It's been, really successful. And now it's got 55 employees based here in Jackson in Wyoming. And that started with 4. And I talk about, TGR growing into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And I don't say that to extol its virtues. We spend all that money back into the state. Everyone here knows production isn't the most profitable business in the world. It's passion-based. It's driven by people who care about the industry, and they pour it all back in. So all that money that we generate is going back into the Wyoming community. We have a state-of-the-art office already here in Wilson. We've got over 20 edit bays. As I mentioned, 50 staff, and millions of dollars invested in equipment. And so we're here, we're invested, and we're part of a robust, the solution to a robust economy. We're a stepping stone, but we're already here and we're already doing it. Over and above the 55 full-time employees that we have, I probably work with 50 freelancers, people in audio, people in color, people in post-production, people in scouting. And so not only am I employing people year round, I'm also supplementing freelancers so they can stay here and work in the state. The second point I was going to talk about was how a film production incentive program assists a company like TGR. I know the previous program from the ground up. In 2012, I was creating the 3-ring binders that were 4 inches thick with every single expenditure. I started at the ground up, and I like to think I know it, inside and out. I've gone back on what is a qualified expense, what isn't. And through that process, I learned that, wow, it really does help to have a Wyoming employee, not an Idaho employee. It really does help and encourage me as a business owner and decision maker to make decisions to impact Wyoming. Talent. This is a big one for me. I interview, I could say, hundreds of people a year. We need to get talent into Wyoming. I'd like to keep them here as well. And to keep them here, I need to work. And this isn't about the numbers. It's about a robust film industry in Wyoming. And so the more ongoing work I can offer the talent, if I get them in for a 6-month project and then I've got another project, suddenly they're a lifelong resident of the state. And we've seen that to grow to where we are, but we need a robust industry here to continue that growth. And then I was going to talk about, the more production work we have, the better I can keep people here. I'm going to leave that to the end. So some of the real life examples that are happening today is, I recently bid on a 7-figure, just over $1 million auto commercial, fully shot in Wyoming, fully post-produced in our studio in Wyoming, and we were second. We weren't competitive enough. that had a huge, impact on our business alone, but the people I could have brought in and continued on after that project, and that would have been done in 2021. So it would have been done in a 4-month period. That spend would have happened directly. We're currently working on a 4-film series with HBO. It's a multi-million-dollar project. It is an international film project. So a lot of the production is all over the world. All the 4 films are being shot all over the world, but all the post-production's back here. We're bringing it back to Jackson. We're doing it in Wyoming. We're keeping our editors busy, our colorists busy, and all our post-production staff busy with that. Most of you have been to Wilson, Wyoming. There's a little bar called the Stagecoach at the bottom of the pass. I was just there last week with a director out of LA who's we're negotiating the rights to a film with. And, as we've heard a lot today, he said, so what's the Wyoming tax credit got if we work with you? And unfortunately, I said none. But, that's a continuation conversation. I'd love by the time we get that project, we have something in place. In talking about how the business can grow quickly, I was talking to our fellow executives the other day. We've got 9 feature films or short films in production right now, including those 4 HBO films, which we post-produced. Half of them are being shot here. Some of them 100% are being shot here. We're doing an amazing film on the Wind River and the Indigenous tribes down there and the water issues. That's going to be fully Wyoming produced, fully Wyoming filmed, and really promote our state. And that's a project. That's not a commercial. That's a film that's going to be distributed digitally. Now, again, as I say, I don't say this to talk about, TGR as a success story. I talk about it to give you an example of what can be achieved with the robust film industry. There's room for 5, 10, 20, 25 companies of our size in this state. And then finally, the last conversation was just the New Mexico conversation reminded me of this Italian producer who hit me up a couple of years ago, and he wanted to film a snow film. No, we're snow skiing experts. Jackson Hole has the best snow in the world. And he's like, I really want you to do this film. You have to do this film, but you have to shoot it in Taos, New Mexico. And, we're like, we're not going to shoot it down there. It just doesn't even rise to the level of production that we want to do. And we want to keep that here. So in conclusion, I know there's a lot of fiscal responsibility with the committee and the legislature in the state of Wyoming. There's a lot of places where they can put money. But really, what I come down to is the fact that the Wyoming film industry isn't a cottage industry. It's real, it's expansive, it's sustainable, and it does inspire.
Mr. Hills, thank you. We appreciate that. Committee, Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I think we talk about a lot, especially in the Education Committee, is how we lose a lot of young people. We export all of our talent. Can you just kind of talk, you mentioned that you interview hundreds of people. Do you see this as an opportunity to be an exciting job creator for particularly young people?
Mr. Hills.
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, for sure. We have a robust internship program. We get people coming to, start down there, and I would say 40% of our staff, 50% started as interns. So we like to bring them in, train them, and they come into Jackson. My hard part is keeping them. To keep them, I've got to keep rewarding them financially with their career, and give them a path to follow. And the bigger the opportunities for the whole community, for the whole film industry, the more I can provide that and the more I can keep them here. And that's my hardest thing. I lose a lot of people after 2 or 3 years because I just don't have the ongoing work to keep them here.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your presentation and everybody else involved. Thank you. Oh, Representative Sweeney.
Just a quick question, quick math off of some of the materials.
Representative Sweeney, if you'd move your microphone a little closer.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. So I noticed on some of the materials from what I can add up real quickly, from 2009 through 2017 or 18, it looks like your company might have received over that whole entire period somewhere between 500 and 600,000 total. So my question is, because some years it was as little as 40 or 50,000. and the maximum looked like it was a little over 100,000. Is that enough to incentive to basically drive the industry for the future?
Mr.
Thank-
Hills?
Yep, Madam Chairman, Senator Sweeney, great question. I'm a finance guy, so I like the way you're looking at the actual numbers, but I look at this as just, it's the bigger opportunity, and it's like my story. I was introduced to Wyoming through the film industry, and just having that small little competitive advantage that gets me that Ford job, that brings another $1 million in, that gets me to hire 3 more staff to finish that, and then give them the next project to work on. It's a small step, but it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's that small step that gets you in the door. It's like a cowboy working on Turtle Ranch 15 years ago is here before you today. It's that first step.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I appreciate we've got about 4 minutes left before the break, but there was 2 more people we would like to speak from the committee.
Okay.
The next one is Kelly Estes, if I pronounced that correctly, and Kelly will be on the screen.
Okay.
That's correct. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the time to visit with you guys today. I just wanted to give you some information on what's gone on in the film industry in Natrona County specifically over the years. The first project that landed here, and I wasn't here to do it, sadly enough, but was Hellfighters in 1968 with John Wayne. They filmed just west of Casper. It was South America is what the setting was supposed to be for that. So what's interesting about that is when I moved here and worked in tourism, I ran the county parks department for a long time. So when I started that job, we did tourism tours out there and showed people things. And that was one of the things that they came to town to see back when I first moved here in the 90s, was where Hellfighters was filmed. And people wanted to go check that out. So that's just kind of an interesting, an additional piece on this industry is the tourism piece that comes afterwards. The next time that I was exposed to this industry was in 1997 when the Wyoming Film Office contacted me to work on Starship Troopers. They ended up using Hell's Half Acre, which is one of our county parks just outside in the county. We started scouting with them in the fall, and we worked with them until I think they finally ended up leaving at the end of June of that year. What's been really cool about that is they ended up sending us some of their economic development pieces, what they actually spent while they were here. Their total spend when they were in Natrona County was $4.277 million, and that was back in 1997. So some of that was crew. They had almost 800,000 in local hires that they had in Casper. They had over $1 million in hotels. They told us they had almost 19,000 total room nights during the time they were doing their production here. So it was massive. And you start to put those numbers into today's numbers, and a quick calculation that showed a 3.5% increase in inflation each year would put that closer to $8 million for a spend of the same size nowadays. So Starship Troopers was such a great boon to Natrona County. They didn't just hire people to work out there on the set itself, but they hired all the rentals that they had. They rented office space in town. They rented warehouse space in town. They rented vehicles. They rented all kinds of things just to keep their production going. Bought fuel. Wardrobe places that did dry cleaning had to stay open overnight and run a different crew because they would clean all their uniforms every night after the shoots during the day. It was just an incredible boon to the society, to our area. So the county commissioners had me go ahead and start a film office back in those days. And when we were running our film office here, we did many advertisements. We did Toyota trucks. We did Marlboro clothing. We had a gentleman that ended up coming here and shooting his catalog 3 different times in the state of Wyoming. We had a Lady Marlboro commercial that was shot by Ridley Scott, and it was out on the Willow Creek Ranch. We brought in 400 horses from all over the country. Wyoming didn't have enough horses that they could put together to actually do the filming. So we brought them in. They had a crew of 100, stayed at the Parkway Plaza, and did a great thing for our economy then as well. More recently, we had the Wells Fargo commercial that shot in downtown Casper for 2 nights. They were close to $100,000 on those 2 nights they were here, and hired about 50 locals to be extras for them, as well as crew and caterers and all those sort of support services that go along with it. And the most recent thing that we had here was Street Outlaws, which came last year because we could offer filming to them here without as many COVID restrictions. We're wide open spaces, all that good stuff. And their estimated impact on the economy was 1.8 million for Street Outlaws back last year. And Diane, I wanted to thank you for bringing up An Unfinished Life, because that was one of the first things I had actually scouted for you guys. Matiti, Wyoming is where that was supposed to be set. That's where the author wanted it set. So we shot lots of photos of Matiti and then lost it to Canada. But I'm very cognizant of your time, so I just wanted to give you a really quick overview of what's gone on here in Natrona County. Currently, we're starting a new film office that's going to be in support of what the state initiative is going on right now. And we want to be able to go out there and get the business cranking again in central Wyoming. But thank you for your time, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. And does Natrona County provide funding in terms of a rebate or any sort of incentive county-wide?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Just recruitment.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your overview and your testimony to the committee. Committee questions for Mr. Estes? Yes, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to add, thank you, Kelly, for a great presentation, but also for me, owning the Parkway Plaza at the time, for Starship Troopers, we were able to open up an entire closed wing, 50 some rooms because of that production. And it really helped us survive and move forward on that business, let alone the other productions we also benefited from. And the Wells Fargo was we had sold the hotel by then, but that was huge for Casper to try to produce a winter scene in the middle of the summer. And in front of Lou Talbert's downtown on 2nd Street, but it was a great piece. So
thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Good to know there's an economic boon, even though the movie itself might have not been so fantastic. All right. Thank you, Mr. Estes. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to introduce Kate Wiltshire from here in Du Bois and Turtle Ranch, and she'll be the final speaker from the working committee today.
Very good. Thank you.
Hi, Madam Chair. So I'm Kate Wiltshire and I live in Du Bois. I'm very proud to live here. My husband, Robin, and I live just west of town on Turtle Ranch. Robin has been in the film business for over 30 years. He, let me look at this. He provides animals for productions across America. So when I met him, I was hitchhiking around the world and I met him in the Rustic Pine Tavern and my trip ended. And I ended up going around America with him, providing animals and bringing productions to Wyoming as much as we could. Yes, we do work for Wells Fargo, but I'm not allowed to talk about it in detail because of an NDA. So thanks for bringing it up. If you've seen a Budweiser Super Bowl commercial with Clydesdales in it, then that's some of what we do. Robin is the trainer behind all those magical TV spots. When I'm not working with Robin on his projects, I freelance as a location scout, producer, or production coordinator in Fremont and Teton counties mainly. I work with smaller productions that source local talent, fill up our hotels and restaurants, shoot on private ranches and national forests, and rent local equipment and props. They buy souvenirs, and some even come back with their families on vacation. Some examples are Ford, Chevrolet, Honda, Land's End, Anthropology, The Amazing Race, Jeep. The list goes on. These smaller productions have budgets that range from about $50,000 to $250,000. It's definitely a positive economic impact to these small Wyoming towns. It's money they're not expecting, so it's fantastic. There is nothing more rewarding than hiring local country town kids for an LL Bean catalog to model clothes. And it's so exciting for the family and everyone really enjoys it in a local town. in 2019, I was a representative and location manager for El Camino, which we talked about before, a Breaking Bad movie on Netflix. They came to Wyoming to shoot one scene, the final scene of their movie. The rest of the movie was shot in New Mexico due to the incentive program in that state. It was a challenging time with record snowfalls and road closures during our shoot. We had over 100 people on set, and I hired local residents as production assistants, medics, highway patrol, road traffic control, a local transport company to take crew to and from set, caterers, props such as snow machines, essentials such as porta potties and dumpsters, snow plows. We filled the hotels and restaurants. Togety Lodge was our base camp, and we built a helipad. They spent close to $500,000 during the week they were here. The director, Vince Gilligan, and the producer, Charles Neuwirth, both told me on separate occasions that if our state had a film incentive program, they would come back with more projects. Laurie Bolton, the location manager that hired me, said the same thing. She said, film companies such as Paramount and Disney only scout on the scope of incentives, which sadly leaves Wyoming off the list. It is disappointing to see Wyoming-based stories being shot in other states or countries due to this. I think film is a great cash infusion into small business in Wyoming. It also creates employment for many residents while productions are in town. I've seen it firsthand in this small town of Du Bois. And as this was sort of covered before, but the pandemic and lockdowns around the world, people are hungry for new content. And it's been written and produced across America, productions that only source locations that implement an incentive program. So basically, Wyoming film will not grow if it is not competitive. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilshire. Committee questions? Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, just a quick comment. What a pleasure this morning. We've actually met some heroes. So it's great to meet you. Thank you for your testimony. I've known Mr. Estes for a long period of time and really respect, the work he does. But out in my pickup, I have a Teton Gravity hat, and it's my best hat. I love going around the state. People will ask me about it, and now I have some more foundation to tell them what the hat is all about. So anyway, thank you all for great testimony this morning. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So committee, I think we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back in and discuss this further.
Madam
So,
Chairman,
yes.
we have one lady on the line. that
Oh,
would like
I'm
to
I
provide public
apologize.
comment.
Okay,
Anna Olson.
Anna, thank you. Sorry. Ms. Olson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chairman Flitner and Chairman Ellis. I will keep this brief. I know you are ready to go on break. Thank you for taking comment online. I would like to compliment, as a Zoom attendee, this committee meeting has been the most smooth experience and efficient. So thank you to everyone who's organizing it. For those who can't be in the room, it really makes a difference to make public comment and listen in. I am going to touch on three quick things. You've heard many times, and I will also reiterate that I would very much be in favor of a film production incentive. With no incentive, we have no film industry in Wyoming. Companies will not come, companies will not even consider us. And when Senator Salazar said, I'd like to get excited about this, I'd just like to point out the cultural history of film in Wyoming is what is exciting. From 55, The Far Horizon, Charlton Heston, Disney, Spencer Mountain, Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, Clint Eastwood, Close Encounters, Flicker, Starship Troopers, Rocky IV, Shane, Django Unchained. If you can't get excited by that list, then I think you missed out on Film 101 because it's incredible. But here's the point, that pipeline stopped. There is no more excitement because there's no more major film companies coming to Wyoming. So please consider that you hold the keys to unlocking that excitement again, bringing the film industry back. On the flip side, what you've heard from other speakers this morning is that this is a statewide industry that is surviving on smaller shoots, is surviving on Delta and Wells Fargo and some commercial shoots who have money, and we're very grateful for them. And we've seen them in Jackson too. I apologize for those. I've just realized I didn't say I am Anna Olson with the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce. I also sit on the Wyoming Office of Tourism Board. But I just would like to say the statewide impact is absolutely key. Sheridan, Casper, Devil's Tower, Northwest, Southwest, you've heard from all of those just today. And then, you know, this commercial shoot concept, we do have the assets that they're looking for. That was another point raised. Snow in the off season, mountains year round, accessibility to mountains, super key point. You know, you need a tram or you need gondolas or you need ways through horses or whatever for a lot of these movies. Wyoming can provide those. Air access is critical, and that is improving with some of the work being done throughout the state on the improved air service. So, you know, these things don't all work in a vacuum. Improved air will encourage more film companies into here. The incentive program, there was a question about, you know, the challenges of infrastructure. And of course, the incentive program is set eventually to offset those. And so I really do, again, encourage it being an incentive and a rebate, because that gives people the power to make choice if we don't have exactly what they're looking for right now. But obviously the experts you've heard from this morning are talking, some of them are talking about the future and the opportunity, which is where we can all also get very excited. And finally, I just want to comment one thing as an in-state benefit. Don't think it's been mentioned yet. With the PASS program, in my future job, my past job, I was the marketing director at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. We were also a recipient of incentive funding to make a movie called Cable to the Sky with Emmy Award-winning producer Peter Palafian. It was a historical documentary about rebuilding the aerial tram. We would have never made that movie and never captured the history of Wyoming in such an incredible documentary, thanks to the incentive program. So making internal Wyoming stories and history and future stories come alive can also be a small but increased, you know, another piece to supporting this incentive program, so that Wyoming-based businesses can also take advantage of it to, you know, really capture stories that probably would not be captured. I've worked with Teton Gravity Research for the pleasure of over 2 decades. They're an incredible business in our region. But what the humble Mr. Brett didn't tell you is their global reach. And they really have put Wyoming on the map in the winter sports industry, the outdoor industry, and all of the future outdoor rec industry that a lot of you also are very excited about. Mountain biking, kayaking, surfing. Yeah, surfing in Wyoming. I mean, it all happens here, and we need to capture it, and we need to keep providing the tools for businesses to take advantage of more jobs, more investment, and keeping it in Wyoming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. We appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Committee questions? All right. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And with
Have a great
that,
day.
Madam Chairman,
yes.
just interject. We have worked with PBS and do have that video that Director Schober
Oh, okay.
offered. I don't know if you'd like to view that at this time, but second time's the charm.
And Chris Brown, I think, is also online. So why don't we take, it's 10:44. Let's take a, can we do a 5-minute break? All right, we can do a 5-minute break. We'll come back in. We'll watch the video. We'll hear from Mr. Brown, if you don't mind, Chris. And then we'll watch the video courtesy of PBS. So 5 minutes. Thank you.
An animal like an apatosaurus starring in a movie is a really great thing to see as a paleontologist. At what is easily one of the richest concentrations of dinosaur bones and
People are connecting here. Sorry. I should have given you guys, sorry, I forget. I'm not the only one running the show here, so thank you. Mr. Brown, can you hear me?
I sure can, Madam Chairwoman. Can you hear me okay?
We can, and I just was telling you for the sake of time, brevity would be very welcome. Thank you.
I will be very brief, 3 minutes or less, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. Chris Brown, representing the Wyoming Lodging and Restaurant Association and the Wyoming Travel Industry Coalition. Appreciate the opportunity to testify remotely. I had planned to be there in person and that got upended at the last moment. But we stand in support of legislation enabling a Wyoming film production incentive. You know, if there's one thing that we all agree on, it's that everyone in this meeting is proud of the amazing state that we live in. And when I watched the videos from the Wyoming Office of Tourism that we saw at your last meeting this spring in Cheyenne, I could feel the power and the beauty of those Wyoming natural resources that were featured. It just seems a shame time and time again, films that pretend to be in Wyoming, but are actually filmed elsewhere. And it just stings a little bit to know that the CJ Box series is being shot outside of Wyoming. Madam Chairwoman, we've already heard that advancement of this initiative has potential economic benefits. Film crews that shoot on site here, eat in Wyoming restaurants, spend money in Wyoming retail stores, and hire Wyoming workers. And I think one point, a part of the bill that should be underscored is that expenses are reimbursed only after an extensive audit of them. Madam Chairwoman, very brief personal story. when I was a kid learning how to fly fish, I did it primarily by watching the LL Bean Learn How to Fly Fish video, and I watched it a million times. And it was filmed on one of the most beautiful streams that I had ever seen. It was something so much bigger than as a 14-year-old that I had ever experienced, to the point where I called LL Bean and asked them, where was this filmed? I have to go there. It ended up being filmed in a remote town in Maine that we family vacationed at numerous times after that. And I tell that story not to suggest that every film will result in a huge influx of visitors, but more to illustrate that movies and the images that they project inspire people. And it's our hope that you all will move this bill forward today. We feel like it's a valuable tool, additional tool in the toolbox to help grow the state's second largest industry. I realize we're short on time, and I appreciate it, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it. All right, and if we could see the videos now that we were unable to watch previously.
Well, I Wyoming because I love dinosaurs, and I knew that Wyoming had some of the best dinosaur fossil fields in the world. So I came out here to enjoy the fossil legacy that Wyoming has to offer. Wyoming is, I like to call it the geologic Disneyland. It's an area full of fossils, and not just full of fossils, but just full of adventure. Some of the most famous animals that have ever been found have been found right here in this state. Wyoming's true dinosaur legacy isn't so much in dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus as it is in the long-necked dinosaurs. What I would argue are the most iconic dinosaurs, Apatosaurus, again, Diplodocus, and all those species. And seeing an animal like an Apatosaurus starring in a movie is a really great thing to see as a paleontologist, because when I see the good dinosaur and I see a dinosaur like Arlo, it's not only showcasing dinosaur that's very much a Wyoming dinosaur, one that we find a lot of, one that we know a lot about, and one that's littered across this entire state. It's showing it as a living animal, responding to danger, responding to, even more human emotions like friendship, love, concern. Again, we're showing them as living, breathing creatures rather than just stoic mounts in a museum. So you're looking at what is easily one of the richest concentrations of dinosaur bones in terms of the sheer amount that's coming out of this one spot. So what we're finding are dinosaurs very similar to Arlo. Over 1,600 bones from large and small Diplodocus and Apatosaur. This is a dinosaur trackway that's directly over the existing bone site. These large suppressions you see here and continuing throughout this crack in the rock are the undersides of dinosaur footprints. So you're seeing the spot where the dinosaur actually pressed his foot into the mud. This whole progression on this hillside could represent millions of years of time in the late Jurassic period, where you have dinosaurs like Arlo by the scores just plodding along this area, huge herds of massive long-necked plant eaters roaming this landscape looking for food and keeping an eye open for the occasional predator. Well, this is a skull of an Apatosaurus, and it's a little bigger than we would expect to find for Arlo. It has a very small head in relation to the body, and as a result, they didn't have a very big brain, so they weren't the most intelligent creatures, but you're not going to ask an animal like Arlo to do your homework for you. All it needs to know how to do is to get food, how to find water, and how to avoid predators, and that's all Arlo needs to do. But then again, he's a young dinosaur, and young dinosaurs probably got into a lot of trouble just like young people do. So an animal like Arlo would have been very curious about his environment and probably got into a lot of trouble as well. Well, our museum is a little different than most museums in that most of our manpower, from digging in the site to cleaning the bones in the lab, isn't done by trained paleontologists like myself and my colleagues, but it's done by everyday people through our Dig for a Day and Shovel Ready programs. We held those during the summer, during our active field season, Families can come out and dig in the sites with us. They find bones, they help us map and catalog the bones, and then they come down and help clean the bones in the lab. And through all that work, we're able to produce the dinosaur skeletons that we have. We're constantly trying to exhibit more of what we find in our sites to show people more of what Wyoming has to offer in terms of its dinosaur diversity.
Thank you. And I think for the sake of time, Wyoming PBS, I appreciate very much that you guys have teed this up for us, but I think we'll forego anything else. And I believe Director Schober will provide us those links via email. So thank you. While I'd like to watch those further, I think, is there further public comment? Anybody else online or in the room that would like to provide testimony? Okay, so committee, what is your pleasure? Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to see this committee go forward with a Wyoming film production incentive bill. I guess my preference would be that this bill would have in it the element of only using lodging tax as a funding mechanism rather than the general fund. That there would be a veterans and displaced workers provision to that incentive or preference. And that finally, we would take a look at a rebate system by which, from the testimony that we heard, it gives more flexibility for those coming to take advantage of that. So that's my suggestion if anyone wants to.
And Senator Salazar, is that a suggestion or a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay. do I have
And
a
if
second?
we were looking at a dollar amount up to, my preference would be up to $3 million.
Okay, and seconded by Representative Hunt. Committee? Comments? Vice Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question on the funding. Is that a per year, per biennium? What would be the time that funding would be?
Senator Salazar.
I was thinking of biennium, 3 million, but I'd be guided by others on this committee as to if they think that's too low. My preference would be on a biennium basis, especially since this will be a startup again to see how much of that is actually used in the coming years. So, but I think 3 million, starting this up again, is something that probably would work. And I do that, Madam Chair, I do this because I believe we will more than receive money back, and that the state is going to be a winner, the taxpayers are going to be a winner. I think all of us saw the impressive testimony with regard to new jobs that will be developed here in the state. So I have no problem, at least in my chamber, defending this with the added revenue as well as the incentives for new jobs in the state of Wyoming. So that's why I bring this motion.
Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question on the rebate. You know, we were provided with two ideas or an idea of having two tiers from experts in the industry. So I'm curious to know if the motion wants to create a rebate program with tiers that are more or less structured as was provided to the committee. And then the second question I have is about displaced workers. Obviously, we know who veterans are, but I'm just trying to understand who you mean by when you're talking about displaced workers.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as far as the two-tier, the answer is yes. As far as the displaced workers, my thought would be those in the energy industry. I think we all know who we're talking about and make that clear as far as a preference. So that's what I was thinking of.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I totally agree. I think the 3 million we can at this point use as a placeholder as we develop this further. And on displaced workers, veterans, that can be added to either tier, that it could be an additional preference within those tiers.
So just so I'm clear, you're asking the Department of Tourism to make sure that they fund this initially with 3 million from Senator Salazar,
Yes, Madam Chair, up to,
up to.
depending on
Okay.
what the requests are. And then the other thing, the other suggestion, Madam Chair, was I like the idea of an audit before anything is paid out. After the job is completed, that there is a complete audit before any payment is made. I like that provision as well.
Okay. Committee, further comments? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate my fellow senator bringing the motion. I intend to support it. I just have a couple of thoughts, maybe a caution or two. Having been around for a while and discussed this program for many, many years and watched it sunset, I would just say that there was a lot of lobby pressure to eliminate this program. And the minute we draft this, I just want to caution the committee that you're going to get hit. And there are people who can't believe that we would consider an incentive program like this. I disagree with them, and I'm going to be prepared to take something forward if the committee is in support. It feels like we are, and I think it's appropriate. I like Representative Sweeney's thought, Madam Chairman, that if let's put a placeholder in there and let's not limit ourselves right off the bat. We may want, if we really want to jumpstart this industry, which I think would be appropriate, let's just not rein in the horse yet. Couple of cautions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So my thought there was this will come out of the lodging tax, the statewide lodging tax. We don't know what that's totally gonna pan out to be, but indications, as we heard this morning, look extremely good. And my belief is the tourism board will, help guide this with procedures and rules once the legislation could get ferreted out. So that's the additional comment about the placeholder effect.
Okay, thank you. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I certainly second and support this motion. I think that, and I do that with a dose of healthy skepticism as to how this goes going forward and how much of a return we might potentially see on it. But I think that, and Senator Landon has a good point on the pushback that we'll likely see from this. But I think that personally, my response to that is, especially with the thorough amount of testimony that we've received here today and prior to this with emails and other communication, that the ground on this has changed. And not just with COVID and the migration of the film industry out beyond Los Angeles and California, but I think that this is sort of one of those tools in the toolbox things that why would we not go forward with this to have it? I mean, does anybody take us up on it? I guess we'll find out. But since we do have this increased lodging tax that went into effect at the beginning of the year, I think that this is a worthwhile thing to use that and put towards it. I think that beyond the testimony we've heard with COVID, there has been, in my estimation, again, just as a casual observer, a resurgence in an interest in the West when it comes to filming and movies and series. I mean, just several over the last 10, 15 years, the works of Taylor Sheridan and some of these other producers that are out there, there's been a huge boom in Western neo-noir, modernist, whatever you want to call it, films. So I think that there is a currently an untapped potential here. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Jennings, and then Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam General Chair Lady. Appreciate your time. So I'm going to speak against this. I know it's going to come as a shocker to all of you. There are 4 to 7 people per year when we did have this subsidy in place. That's a very tiny subset. It's understandable that the tourism people would like this. I totally get that. And it's understandable why the industry would like this. And it's even understandable why local governments would like this. It's understandable why individuals that have personally benefited from this would be supportive. What's not as well understood is holding this idea up against the Wyoming Constitution. It no doubt has merit as a money maker or a potential money maker. And it's easy to vote for that diversity, but it's not as popular to vote against government picking winners and losers. And in this case, we're picking Hollywood as the winners and the losers being small businesses around this state who have struggled in the last year and a half just to keep their doors open. So if they don't happen to be in one of the places where somebody just gets lucky enough to land one of these deals, they get to go on vacation if they're lucky enough to go on vacation and pay some of the money that goes over to this industry. I look at the report and I don't know, guys, if you look at that very closely, there's a number of warnings about the constitutionality of this. I can't make it jive. I won't vote for it. I think it's a mistake. I think far too many people in this state have had a rough year. And I think Senator Landon's right. We're going to get a pushback, and rightfully so. A lot of people have had a hard year. So I'm going to be a no. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Senator Guru. You're muted. Senator, Senator Guru, you are muted.
Sure.
There you go.
Sorry about that, Madam Chairman. God, that first part was so good too. Thanks. I think on and for the amendment or on for the bill draft, I think that I don't quite see it the way my good friend Representative Jennings sees it. I'm in business and have been for a long time, 40 years in Wyoming. And I look upon this as, it's been talked about, a tool in the toolbox. I look at it as the future. I look at it as a way that we can diversify our economy, a way that we have talked about time and time and time again, of ways to try to increase our footprint out there in the business world. Also, for the first time today, heard, and I think as Chairman Ellis had mentioned, about doing something that we always lament, about doing something for the children of Wyoming, giving them a job that maybe they might be excited about staying here and becoming part of an industry. I also think that it's fortuitous to put in things to help our veterans and to help displaced workers. The type of workers who build these sets, who build these production models, things that are people that are our displaced workers. Their strengths, welders and builders. These are people that can benefit the most from jobs that come back. We can offer them another avenue of support. I think it's different than it was a few years ago, and I do recognize my good friend from Turner County's caution, but we're using dollars that were not general fund dollars in this program. We're using a new revenue stream that we created to try to do this very thing. So I'm in for and support this, and look forward to its passage and working for it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. So we have a motion, and Mr. Brody, are you clear on the parameters of the bill draft as presented by Senator Salazar?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have 2 questions, just more clarification. First being that this would be from the special projects account and not the 80% account that was created with the state lodging tax fund. If I can get confirmation on that. And then second, whether we all know what displaced workers means, I think you can certainly find detractors. And if I could get maybe just a bit more direction from the committee on if that's skilled physical labor or all sorts of skilled labor, or what the sort of parameters of that are. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Salazar.
The answer to the first question is yes on the, and the answer to the second question as far as displaced workers, again, I would, that is what I had envisioned was your clarification of skilled labor. But I would welcome any comments by anyone else in the committee that has any thoughts on that.
Yes, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be honest with you. I think that I struggle with the skilled worker concept. I definitely love the veteran concept. I think that's amazing. I think that's definitely a need to try to help bring more work opportunities into those areas. I did 8 years as what they would call those skilled workers. I worked at a coal-fired power plant, and I'll be honest with you, I think I can speak and say, you know what, there's a group of working guys and gals that are able to go find another job. And are we driven by a roller coaster of an economy? Yeah, we are, especially in the mines and in the oil field. But at the end of the day, where do we stop? I mean, if we start showing preference to something like that, where do we stop? And I just think that might get pretty convoluted and pretty ugly. And then just an area, well, I'm a skilled worker in this industry, why didn't I get a preference? And I don't know, I just think maybe sometimes veterans, yes, but maybe the skilled worker might be able to something we can slide off the end. Just a thought.
That's a good comment. I think that would probably goes without saying. That's who they would hire anyway, would be those people without us being that prescriptive within the language of the bill. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to just see us continue to add the displaced energy workers in that, because again, that's the problem we're having is a lot of those folks that will be laid off and have been laid off in the oil industry and coal industry who do have specialized skill sets. And that may be making it too narrow, but I think, again, that's our number one industry and the tourism is our number two. So again, I love the veterans part of it, but I would agree that if we could just add energy in there, I don't know if that will help or just muddy the waters.
Okay, Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe a thought to just move us forward on it is maybe take the energy displaced worker concept off the table for the purposes of today's bill draft. But I think the bringers of the motion could maybe reach out to the Petroleum Association of Wyoming Mining Industry, or Wyoming Mining Association, and just get some feedback from them, and then do a little homework of how this could maybe fit into a 2-tier, and then maybe bring that as a standalone amendment when we look at a bill draft, assuming the motion passes today for our next meeting. That's maybe a path forward.
Very good. All right, so we do not require a roll call for a bill draft. So show of hands.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chair, just a clarification. So does the bringer of the amendment agree to maybe take the displaced worker concept off the motion today for today's purposes, but maybe we can work up something that we can look at separately later on?
Senator.
Madam Chair, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Very good. All right, so all those in favor of having LSO draft a bill, show of hands, all raise your hands. Hold them up so we can get a count. Okay, I say motion passes. And the noes. Thank you. Representative Jennings. We appreciate it. All right. So LSO will let you proceed with your work. And Senator Landon, moving on to the next bullet point, visitation of the Wyoming Capitol. We had anticipated that our friends in Utah might join us, but they declined. And so with your permission, if we might maybe punt this to another day, if you wouldn't mind, just for the sake of time.
Madam Chairman, very happy to do that. And
okay.
Any interest, feel free to email or text, or just so you know, that subcommittee will be working as we go along, and I can catch people up at any time. So
Okay,
thank you.
All right.
Glad to step aside.
thank you, sir. I appreciate your being so courteous. And so we are behind schedule, and my apologies, but I believe our Park County Sheriff and Chairman Scott Stewart is available. Is he in the room, or is he in the hallway? Is he, if we could invite him into the room right now, would be appreciated. Oh, are you Mr. Stewart? Sheriff? You're up. We apologize for being behind schedule and off our mark a bit. So we thank you so much. Please join us at the table, and committee. We're at that point in our schedule where we're going to get an update on Wyoming Search and Rescue, and our Park County Sheriff, he is Chairman Scott Stewart, has joined us here today. And so Sheriff Stewart, if you would please go ahead, the floor is yours. Oh, and just, yeah, you'll have to give it a moment. There you go.
Okay. Thanks. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Myself, Sheriff Scott Stewart, Park County, Deputy Director George Nycom, and Ashley Paulsrud from Wyoming Homeland Security. So I'll get started, give you a little background about myself real quick. 30 years with the Sheriff's Office, 31 with the Search and Rescue up there in Cody. Been on the council here for 14 years and chairman for 3. So one of the things we want to talk about is kind of where the councils went, where we came from, where we're at now. We're sitting solid. We're very good. We'll go over some numbers in a bit. We really pride ourselves on the amount of training we've been able to provide for the state, as well as reimbursements for the state. So with that, Ashley, you want to give them some numbers?
Okay, so members of the committee, what you have in front of you, at least I hope all of you have the numbers in front of you, but what we did was we ran a trial balance over a 5-year fiscal period. So you could kind of see the revenues and the expenditures over a 5-year period. We started in 2017, we had a beginning balance of just over $1 million. And as of the end of fiscal year 21, June 30th, 2021, we ended up with an ending balance of a little over 1.7 million. I ran the balances again on Monday, and we're still sitting about 50,000 over what we were at the end of 21. It seems like that's quite a bit of money. I think we're solvent. However, we do have in policy that there needs to be a minimum balance set in that account of 400,000. And that's to ensure that we can pay any big claims that come in. We range, our claims run anywhere from about $200 to up to $23,000. We've seen some big claims in 2010 of about $67,000, and then some claims upwards of $1 million as well in the 90s. So that's kind of a rundown on the financial side. Some statistics of the missions that we've done over the years. Since 2009 to date, we have 3,218 reported missions. These are missions that the counties submit to our office, and then we track them for a number of purposes. Year to date, just in 2021, we are sitting at, I got some updated totals this morning, 196 missions. And we haven't even hit hunting season or snowmobiling season, so we expect that number to climb pretty rapidly this fall.
Ashley, what was your last name? I apologize.
My last name is Paulsrud.
Would you spell that, please?
I sure will. Paulsrud.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the numbers too. I live at the base of the Bighorn Mountains, and our hired man is a search and rescue volunteer, and Sheriff Blackburn is a dear friend. And so I'm very much aware of it seems like the uptick in missions this summer. At my layman's view, it seems like there've been a lot, and we have certainly lost him 3 or 4 times this summer where he's had to just leave us to go do that work. So I appreciate you presenting us with those numbers.
So getting back to the training and the missions and some of the stuff we talked about, we started about 10 years ago. It was in our bylaws and stuff that we could go ahead and pay for training around the state. Our requirements are it has to be open to the entire state. We advertise that open to all search and rescue members from across the state of Wyoming. Some of the stuff we brought in is pretty phenomenal that we would have never had the ability to bring in if it weren't for this fund. We brought in a man from Australia 2 years ago that's world renowned for lightweight climbing stuff and lighter weight gear. He put on a 4-day training. We had, I think, 4 different counties attend that. And we couldn't have done it without this council, without this money. We've done a lot of ice rescue, cave rescue, rock type work, water work, swift water rescue. So it's really a blessing to see that fund strong enough to where we can really reach out and start training our members. I think from what I was 30 years ago, our members are 10 times better trained and more well equipped with the gear and stuff that we have now. So with that comes a lot of money. We don't buy the gear for the search and rescue or the county. It's stuff that we reimburse should they break it or lose it. And so, for instance, on this last year, on one snowmobile call, I think we tore up, I should use that word, tore up, because we did. But it was because of the conditions we were trying to get to in these snow machines. And it was well over 10,000 just in damaged equipment to the county when we're sitting on a $50,000 search and rescue budget. So to be able to have this fund to reimburse those monies is really a great thing, especially for the training and the reimbursements.
Sheriff Stewart, when you guys rescue someone, do they ever give back to the county that rescued them?
So we see a lot of people donate back. We have a nonprofit organization that's not associated with the sheriff's office. It collects monies and is able to pay for some things. For instance, we ran into a budgetary situation earlier this year with helicopter costs. It was over $13,000 at the end of our fiscal year, which would have put us in a hole. So that nonprofit is able to step up and help fund that and then get reimbursed later down the road when we don't have it in our budget. But to get back to your question, we do have people that give back. We've had people we've rescued 30 years ago that are still sending us a check every Christmas for that. One of the things it was talked about around the state, in fact, Teton County at one time tried to actually bill somebody and they ended up in a lawsuit, and the judges ruled that the sheriff's responsibility, you can't charge for that. And certainly that's one thing we don't want to get into, is people thinking that they're going to get charged this big money for rescue, because we find that they tend to not call us as soon as they should, and then we get into a real predicament, whether it's weather or high water or whatever. So we do have people that give back, and we also have people that occasionally will donate to the actual state fund as well.
And Sheriff Stewart, I know that retention's always been difficult too, purely on the fact that, it's such a stressful, and they see things that.
Sure.
So can you speak to that? How is your retention?
Our retention is actually right now, we typically, in the 30 years I've been there, we're at average in that 20 to 25 range. We're actually sitting about 32 to 34 right now. We seem to have a better retention right now than actually the fire departments do in our community. They're out there doing drives to get more recruitment. We're not having that. In fact, one time we had a waiting list of people waiting to get on. And I think some of the drive is we've got a great group of people. We're well trained and equipped. And then the fact that we throw in now that search and rescue is eligible for the retirement system. So that certainly has been a recruitment drive. I think there's only a few counties right now that are enrolled. We're in the process of doing that, but it's a process of bylaws and setting up things with your clerk. And so we're in amongst of that right now, but that certainly will help us, I believe.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Senator Schuler, and then Vice Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick questions. First of all, the training part of it, is it a 2-day, 3-day, 6-hour? Can it be done online? Is it a hands-on type of thing? And then my second question would be, out of these missions, are the majority of them up in Teton, Park County, Fremont? Where do most of your missions take place? Thank you.
Senator Schumer. So I'll answer the first part of that. There is some online stuff that these folks do. Typically with a lot of the search and rescue, especially ropes and some of that more specialized, it's a lot more hands-on. But I do know during some of that rope class, a lot of that was done online, learning knots and getting a little bit further ahead. So when the actual physical training, it takes less time. We've done trainings from everywhere from when I talk about trainings, I'm talking about, we train every week, every Thursday night, our volunteers train. But when I'm talking about these specialized training, we try to set those up according to regions and cooperate with Teton, so other agencies, so we're not duplicating stuff. Or we had the ice rescue one time was so heavily attended, we had to do 2 different trainings, one in Teton, one in Park. So to answer your question, yes, some's online, and we've had trainings go as many as 4 days in the mountains. And in fact, whether you did one of the Tetons where or cave rescue was, I think, 3 days living in a cave. And what with that, we pay for our volunteers to go. We pay their room and board, their travel expenses. Their volunteers are not getting paid. And then as far as missions, and I think Ashley can talk to this too, the bulk of the missions in Wyoming are on the west side. Teton, Park, Teton, Bighorn, Fremont, Sublette, Lincoln. That's where the bulk it is, obviously, because of the mountain ranges and so forth. But as far as number, Teton's usually up in the 70s missions. They're far ahead of most everybody. And part of that is too, is they also work in conjunction with Teton National Park as well.
Vice Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Sheriff Stewart, thank you for your service on this part into Park County. I was looking through the statute referenced on where your money comes from, and it directs me like a dictionary to many other statutes. So I'm wondering if you could give the short version of where the money comes from to fund this. Thank you.
Certainly. Thanks, Representative Newsom. So there's 2 different revenue streams, the main revenue streams. One is from when a hunter goes to buy a license, there's a box they can check. It used to be $1. I think we raised it several years ago to $2 or any other amount is what it is now. So that money comes in and is directed from the Game and Fish to the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees that fund. Also, we receive revenue from ATV stickers and the state parks. So that money goes channeled to the state parks, which then is channeled into this account here. So that's our 2 main funding streams that we have.
Thank you. Committee, further questions? Yes, sir. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Representative Newsom's question, of the former of those funding sources, how much money comes in from checking that box? And do you know, on average, about how many hunters and outdoorsmen check that on a percentage basis, how many willingly check that and donate?
I'll let her answer that, Ashley.
Thank you, Representative Hunt. It's about half. About half is coming in from the parks, and about half is coming in from the Game and Fish. We do separate them. We don't see, because we don't directly collect that money, we don't see the number of hunters or the number of licenses. We just get kind of a deposit each month into the account, but it's about half right now. We're seeing a lot more hikers out in the national parks. And so we're seeing some more fees come in from ATVs and that kind of stuff.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So to that, is the snowmobile sticker program part of that also?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. I'm getting a nod from.
Getting a nod from Dave.
I
Very good.
believe
State
all
parks.
those state parks fees are collected that way.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have a question? Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of back up, I think, my co-chair and I were talking about this because we do hear, or we have concerns just about, the people that you're going out being, mindful that they're safe. And I don't think any of us have any problem when it's truly needed, but my husband just hiked the Teton Crest Trail a few years ago. And I think some person that was camping up there accidentally rolled and pressed an emergency button that person had on him, and search and rescue was up there, only to find she just rolled over in her sleep and had pushed that button. So I am a little curious to know if you're seeing more of that kind of, deployment, but it was unnecessary. And then just kind of getting to that point too. I mean, obviously this program is funded in large part by hunters and then people that have to register things like snowmobiles and ATVs. Are we missing opportunities, or is there a way? I mean, is that a concern? Is you've got people who are out there hiking a trail, so they don't necessarily have to get those decals or permits, and they're unaware of their ability to help support this program. I think those are some of the bigger questions is, not just the solvency of the fund, but are we fairly capturing it from the users who are benefiting by your service and your ability to get up there and provide those search and rescue services?
Sheriff Stewart.
Senator Ellis, thank you for that. No, well, to get to the first question, when these spot devices and inReach devices and stuff first came out, a spot was the very first one. And it was, you punch the go button and help comes, no way to communicate with them. And yes, they were a problem because people would realize they didn't realize they hit it until we get there. That was one of the issues we had. Somebody else would push it because they were tired and just wanted to ride out. I mean, and on top of that, we had where hunters would go hunting by themselves and tell their spouse or whatever that I'm going to check in every night at 8 o'clock and every morning at 8 o'clock. We had one specific sheep hunter didn't check in. He'd run out of battery power. So that was a problem. We had a lot of conversation in the Sheriff's Association when these devices first started coming out because we were all experiencing the same thing. They were pushing them. We were responding. There's no emergency. Sometimes they didn't realize they'd done it. What we're seeing now is with the invent of the new spot and inReach where it has texting capability. So when you hit that button now, you're going to get a response, a text back from the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center saying we've got a inReach or spot hit. What's your emergency? So that has helped us tremendously. One of the things we created in Park County is they operate off of an email address. So we created a fake email address in our dispatch center to where, and we gave it out to all the outfitters, all the hunters. We put it out several times a year to the public to put this into your spot device, your inReach device. When you have an emergency, hit the main go button, which is going to go wherever it goes, and then they'll be in touch, but also send that to our dispatch center. We're able then to take that, forward it to search and rescue, who now can communicate directly with them. So we're able to cut time down, we're able to cut confusion down, and we're really, it's been a lifesaver. We're getting now where we see these inReach and spot devices, especially from an outfitters camp, because we have them all pre-programmed coordinations and stuff to their camps for landing zones. We're finding now that the outfitter gets a hold of us on the inReach. It used to be sat phones was a big thing, but the prices make them so much better and efficient. And so now a lot of times we didn't respond. We're sending a helicopter in there, a medevac chopper to medevac them out in a lot of cases. So that's one thing to get to that point. They're better than what they used to be with the original devices. Now getting to the point of capturing, as we've seen on our search and rescue counts for years, the number one person we're going out is hikers. They're not the hunters, they're not the snow machines, it's the hikers. And I attributed that because we have a huge area for hikers. I mean, it's an attraction, the Tetons, the Beartooths, it's a huge attraction. So it was presented to us about 3 to 4 years ago. We were just talking about this in the hall. How do we capture those funds? They're not hunters, they're not ATV snowmobile riders. And this gentleman presented a very nice package. And for some reason, the council at the time was kind of a little bit leery. And what happened is this gentleman came forward and he patterned this off of Colorado and Utah. And they sell a search and rescue card. It's a card, basically, you give them a $10 donation, you get this card, I support search and rescue. What's that? The Corsair card. Yeah, okay, Corsair card, the Colorado Recreation Search and Rescue card. And what the worry of the council is that this would be looked at as an insurance. So I'm going to pay $10. Now I've got insurance, if I need it in the backcountry. So that was one of the concerns that we had in going down that road. Now, when they were doing that in Utah, when the gentleman presented that to us, they were bringing in between, I want to say 200 to 250,000 a year into that fund. So that was one way that we had looked at taxes. Another thing was do we put a donation box to the trailhead? During that presentation from Teton County, they had spoke with almost all of their outdoor shops and were really willing to help out and help collect those fees. And we were talking in the hall, we need to revisit that because we're missing a big chunk of these folks who are recreating that aren't contributing to that fund. It would be obviously volunteer, but we would have to sell it in that it is not a insurance card. So I think we talked about putting it on the council's agenda for the next meeting to revisit that and see what we can do there. Can we capture those monies?
Madam Chair, follow up?
Yes.
So I guess it's kind of getting to the nature of something that would be helpful for me to understand is, if you're a hiker, I'm just trying to think of the incentive for you to participate in a program like that. And so if you're they're obviously not charged for the transportation out of their emergency situation to a hospital. That's absorbed by you. And I would like a copy of that court opinion just so I can read it. But from there, you know, I'm guessing if the injuries are severe, they have to be life flighted somewhere else. And so I don't know if that's a hook for the hikers to say, purchase this insurance with a card. And that way there is that nexus so they can say, you know, I'm hiking, this is dangerous. If I get hurt, I'm going to buy this insurance for this trip so that if I need to be life flighted to a larger hospital. I'm just trying to think through how you could how we can start linking that. Because I think you're right. That's the hikers are, you know, that is a concern. And just kind of for the record, you know, someone in my community was just climbing Gannett Peak and unfortunately slipped, and from what we understand, and didn't survive. And so I just want to really thank you. I know that has been a difficult process for a lot of my friends, and you guys are the ones showing up and providing support for those families. So thank you for the work you do. It really is important.
Thank you. Senator Ellis, to address that the case that was out of Teton County, and what it was, if I don't have the year, I believe it's 2007. They called in a helicopter for a snowmobile quote crash. It turned out not to be the case. And in the process, they actually crashed that helicopter and killed one of their members. So Teton went after the guy who called that into district court. And I can certainly find that for you. And that's when the district court judge ruled, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly how it went, but basically ruled that we couldn't charge for that search and rescue because the statute says the sheriff shall provide. It actually says he shall coordinate, but it doesn't give a provision, a repercussion to go after those funds. And what was your second?
Just to follow up, have you thought about a way to link just that concept of insurance? Because you're saying, you know, the concern is that when you buy a $10 search and rescue card, there might be an expectation that that's insurance. I was just talking about, have you had the conversation or thought through some way to encourage those hikers to purchase like MedVac insurance, and so that if they need, just as a hook for them?
Sure, Senator Ellis, that's a very good suggestion. I think, and I think if I remember right, the body here would know more than I do, but I think that they're correct in something with the subscription or the life flight. Last year they passed that bill prohibiting those air flight subscriptions or whatever. So I think they're looking at addressing that. And one of the things we try to do is encourage people all the time to have something, you know, that whether it's life flight. So when we send in any kind of helicopter, if it's not a medevac, we're on the hook for that. We pay for that. The county does, or whatever county. So we tried to, you know, I know there's a big push by Guardian years ago to get everybody to buy those family lift ticket type stuff. One of the things that, you know, we try to encourage those. There's also a thing that we've encouraged people to do for, like I have an inReach device. I've had one for ever since they come out. For I think it's an extra $10 a month. They actually sell you rescue insurance with that. So for $10, $15 a month, you can actually get up to, I think, $25,000 rescue insurance to pay for any kind of associated rescue fees. But we do try to go out and push a lot of that stuff on social media, on our website and some of that stuff as far as those go.
Yes, Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How much of a time is spent, or how much of a cost is there associated with locals who find themselves in a sticky situation, who aren't necessarily sportsmen? If, you know, a local rancher, the horse falls on them out in the pasture, or even if a local child wanders off and gets lost, how frequently do you deal with that? And is that much of a financial drain on your resources, where those people aren't necessarily, you know, haven't contributed because they're not necessarily sportsmen, they're not necessarily outdoors tourists?
You know, I think a vast majority of our rescues up there, when you those type of rescues where it's a lost child, horse injury, or some of that, a lot of those aren't very taxing resource wise, depending on their location. They can. I mean, if we get somebody back in the thoroughfares, back in some deep stuff, it's a burden, and it's a lot of expense to that. As far as how many of those people are not contributing, as far as like the horsebackers, ATV, or well, outside ATV fishermen, or whatever you might have, we have those seasons. I mean, it's like we have these different, it's almost like winter, fall, and spring. So when high water starts rolling in, we've got our whitewater rescue gear locked and ready to go to the truck, and that's a priority. and then it tapers off. Then we're dealing with lost and injured locals and out-of-state people throughout the year. And then boom, we start getting into hunting season. We're switching out all of our whitewater gear for our snowmobiles and our tracked ATVs and some of that. So there's a lot of actually behind the scenes stuff when we're out, not on the missions of readiness and gear and moving stuff around and take care of our aircraft. But I really couldn't answer to how many of those people are not contributing to that fund at this point.
Thank you. Yes, Vice Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You mentioned that some of your funding comes from a checkbox on hunting licenses. Is there that same checkbox on fishing licenses?
Thank you. I believe Representative Newsom, I think it's on all license applications. I believe it's even on some of the, I mean, fishing, bird license, small game. I believe it's on all their licenses.
Thank you. Committee, further questions? Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So does each county sheriff department have their own search and rescue that ties back to the statewide organization?
Sheriff Stewart.
Thank you. Yes, I think every sheriff that I know has a search and rescue organization. I do know in some counties, like I believe, I know at Crook County one time, their search and rescue was basically their deputies. They don't deal with near the technical type rescues that we do on the west side. They're looking for lost hunters, snowmobilers, and stuff like that. So every sheriff that I know has a search and rescue of some sort. But there's a lot of times when we go to pay bills that there's counties don't submit any bills. There's some that might only have one search and rescue call a year. Whereas, we were at one time averaging in Park County 35 to 40, sometimes 45 a year. We're starting to see a drop in that. And I attribute a lot of that to these new devices, in-reach devices, the availability of helicopters, medevac helicopters, where we're just not doing as much as we used to.
And Sheriff Stewart, if we might be able to get a copy of by county call outs like you just referenced, if we could get that, you could just email it to the staff and they can send it on.
We can certainly do that. We can get all of that information to the committee. We also have it on our public facing website, which is our Wyoming Information Sharing Platform site. That site address is wohs.us. And if you pull up that site, there's a bunch of tabs across the top, and one of the tabs is for search and rescue. So it'll say SAR on the tab. If you go to that tab, you can filter by county, by activity, by mission type. You can filter by year. It's a really nice dashboard that just kind of gives that, but we can certainly get some printouts to the committee as well.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. Oh, yes, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I guess one real quick statement. Anytime you buy a license in a store or online, you have the opportunity to donate, which is good. And obviously, if you ever need it, it's a really good thing. So, but the second question, what are we seeing number wise of in-state to out-of-state calls? As far as, I mean, how much of this is tourism based maybe? And how much of this is Wyoming residents that are finding themselves in a place of needing a call out? Do we have that information?
Sheriff Stewart, yeah.
Yeah, Representative Harrelson. We try to track it in our county as far as what we're seeing. Honestly, I think a bulk of ours is going to be, I wouldn't say a bulk, but I would say leaning towards the local resident more than we do the out-of-stater. Now, that will be totally different when you go to Teton County. So I think it kind of references where you're at, and it would depend on the type of and the time of the year of the rescue. I would say the bulk of our hunting season rescue is going to be out non-resident. They get in here, they're not used to altitude. I'm sure Representative Winters can attest to this, but they're not prepared for it. And so I think in that essence, and when it comes to our water rescue, it's going to be a lot more residential people, local. Snowmobiles is going to be a lot more out of state. We're starting to see a lot more, we experienced it this year several times, a lot more influence of out-of-staters going into the wilderness up in the Beartooth, getting back in and can't get out. We had a rescue of 8 subjects this year from up in there. And it's the same group that had been riding up there for at least the last 2 years we've been trying to catch. Finally, they got into a situation where they couldn't get out and we had to airlift them all out of there. So it goes with the season, but I would say more of our rescues are local, average year round.
Interesting. Good question. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just another question. So we talked a little bit about kind of the false alarm rescues that you do. Talk to me a little bit about the numbers of the people that you mentioned that aren't really in great peril. They're just kind of tired on a hike. And I'll confess, I did a hike recently with my son and I was tired. And I'm like, what? I mean, that happens. What do you do and how do you handle those cases? Sheriff.
Thank you. Good question. So as I've said before, we've had a lot of those decrease in the false alarm calls. We have had some that basically, we had one this last winter, out of shape, couldn't quite make it, wanting us to come get them. We gave them directions because based on the weather and stuff that we're like, we're not going to deploy you right now. You need to start moving in this direction. So in order to, with these new devices, be able to communicate that with them, or we can see on a map, if they call in, we've had it where they're lost. So with this new system, we click on their basically their text us, it pulls up on a map right where they're at. We are able to direct them to a trail or to another area to get self-evacuation out of there. So the new ones have cut down a lot of the problems we had, and we're able to assist them, maybe get them back to their vehicle before we would even have time to respond in those locations.
Just to follow up, is that common or is that a rare occurrence that you just have someone who's tired and or a little lost and needs just a little guidance? Is that common or the rare instance?
Senator Ellis, I would say it's rare. We're not seeing near as much of it as we used to. Most of ours that we have anymore are legit. Rarely do we have an instance where it's just I'm out of shape or lost or cold or tired or need to. We did have one a couple years ago, wanted us to drop them in some food, but that's
I'm
rare.
Glad you sucked it up and got yourself off. It would have been really bad. You would have embarrassed this committee. All right. Thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate your time. Did you have any comments?
No, the only thing is we are working on updating that system and making it a lot more user-friendly. So some issues that we address today will bring.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. And so I believe we also have Fremont and Teton County Search and Rescue folks that might be in the room to provide testimony. Are they here or are they not?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
we have Mike Estes from Teton County online
Okay.
available for questions.
Oh, great. Super. Mr. Estes. Are you related to Kelly Estes from Natrona County?
I am not. Can you hear me? Thank you for having me.
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
I've been having some issues with my camera this morning, so I apologize. But I'm
That's
happy
all
to
right.
answer any questions that you would have.
Any questions for Mr. Estes? You're in the hot spot in Teton County, so I don't see anybody with show of hands, but Mr. Estes, if you might just comment to the committee and provide us with sort of an overview of what life is like for a Teton County Search and Rescue volunteer.
Sure, of course. And I have been a volunteer with the Search and Rescue team for 28 years. Currently, as of March, I have recently been hired as the new coordinator for the Search and Rescue team, and am now in charge of making sure the team is mission ready and that all the equipment and personnel are ready to go. At this point of the year, we've had 78 calls for service, and that's since January 1st. We've had about 50, almost 60 missions where we actually would put people in the field. Number, as Sheriff Stewart said, probably our number one is hiking. And then second goes back to the winter time with snowmobiling, skiers, snowboarders, and then following up the summer, with horses and bicycles have been sort of our next line of rescues and call outs that we've had.
And Mr. Estes, your service is phenomenal, that many years. Is it typical that a volunteer would serve that many years in Teton County, or what would be the average?
I think right now, we actually looked it up the other day. There's 3 of us who have been on the team since it originally started as a volunteer team, and they're 28 years ago. Our current average lifespan, as you will, as a team member is about 13 years. We have some that have been on for over 20 years, and we just recently have brought on 10 new members about 2 months ago, and they're starting their training and hope to become operational members by November, December. Currently, our team is made up with the new members of 45 volunteers. Myself is the one paid coordinator for the team. And of course, we sort of underneath the sheriff, Sheriff Carr. And of course, he couldn't be here today, apologizes. So that's kind of where we're at with our team.
And Mr. Estes, I saw an amazing video on, I think it was Wyoming PBS or Montana. It was about a rescue that took place in Teton County on the face of one of the peaks. Was that the derivation of Teton County Search and Rescue? How many years has it been in place?
Well, we also have to define too that in Grand Teton National Park, the Jenny Lake Rangers provide rescue services in the Tetons. So in Grand Teton National Park, they handle all the rescues in the high peaks. Teton County Search and Rescue will assist Grand Teton Park, National Park, if we are called, especially on larger missions like searches for missing people, where they need additional trained personnel on the ground.
Okay, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Estes, just a quick question regarding, did you go ahead with the program to involve retailers? And if not, I'm just curious, among your 45 volunteers, if you have talked about how we could involve all of those folks who use our mountain trails in a better way. Is that going on at Teton where you can round up to the next dollar and donate to the search and rescue, or have you not implemented that?
Mr. Estes? You're muted, sir.
Sorry, there we go. Sorry, that has not been implemented in Teton County, to my knowledge. I think we are fortunate with our outdoor shops here that do promote safety, and we also provide as education programs and activities to residents and visitors that help in the prevention of search and rescue missions.
Thank you. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Michael. I know you also have a foundation that's separate from the Sheriff's Department that helps fund search and rescue. Do you have a kind of a thumbnail on how much money that outfit raises each year?
Mr. Estes, and you're muted. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we are very fortunate. We have support through our Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization, and there's 4 part-time, 1 full-time staff that work there. They provide direct support to the team in the neighborhood of about $500,000, which includes equipment, training, meals, and as well as they purchase the training hours for the helicopter operations that we run during the wintertime. And so, and including of that, if we look at our budgets for the search and rescue team, inclusive of the helicopter operations, the sheriff's office budget, we're at about around $400,000 in sheriff's office budgeting, including capital expenses for this year. So total support between the two foundation and the sheriff's office is around $900,000 a year.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Estes, Teton County has its own helicopter, is that correct?
We contract a helicopter 8 months out of the year. So from October through May, we have a contract with Helicopter Express that provides a ship here in Jackson.
And just for curiosity's sake, what does it cost when that's deployed on a mission?
Our mission hours, when we bill out, they're at $3,800 per hour.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Estes. We appreciate your testimony today. Thanks so much. Oh, Chairman Ellis has a question for you. Teton County girl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, just a sense, we just want to make sure that obviously that counties are having the resources, financial resources they need to be able to conduct these search and rescue missions. But I'm also kind of just teasing around ideas in my head of, the two-way street of it. Would it be helpful I'm just trying to think of a product. I was looking at the Colorado Search and Rescue card. Instead of just having this card, the service that you provide, if you were to like register for $10, got your card, is really just saying, hey, I'm going to be in Teton County. I just want to let the sheriff's office know, here's my plan for my 4-day hike. Here's where I'm going to be. I'm just going to register with you so you know that I'm there. And if something happens to me, then you're at least aware that I'm out there and you're aware of who's in my group. And so like the product that you would offer to the hiker or the, horseback rider or the cyclist or whoever is that they have a point of contact with you so they can check in and say, hey, I'm out there. And if you don't hear from me in 20 days, like something's wrong. So I'm just wondering, have you thought about offering products like that are voluntary that I think hikers and those people getting back in the woods would really actually take you up on?
Mr. Estes?
That's a good question. With the sheer number of people that visit Teton County, I know Grand Teton had over 700,000 visitors in the month of June. And trying to track, that would be a huge task. If something like that was in place. Not to say that it's a bad idea. I think the other that we've been encouraging people is to talk with their friends, family, loved ones, to let them know, tell them where they're going, when they're going to be out. And if here's the witching hour, if I'm not out by this time, you need to call search and rescue. And that's what we've been trying to push, is that it's your friends and family that are going to be the ones that they should know and they should contact and let them know.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to follow up, I was just trying to think of a way to monetize that a bit. If you're going on a 2-mile hike, you're not going to register your hike that day. But, for those people that are getting in the backcountry, because you get on the websites and they tell you, tell your loved ones where you are, when you're going to check in. I'm familiar with all of that. But this would be a way of saying, I'm a hiker. I know I'm going to assume these risks. I also want search and rescue to be aware, like I'm going to tell them I'm leaving and I'm doing this trail. And maybe it's nothing more than that. They're not checking in. You don't need to follow up, but it's just a marker for search and rescue to keep track of kind of how many people are out there. And then monetizing it on the back end for $10. Like as a consumer, I think I would do that just to say, I'm going to tell my sheriff or the sheriff in this county that I'm going to be there. And for $10, they're at least going to know. And then I'm just trying to think of the monetary, like a voluntary way to monetize this for you guys.
Mr. Estes?
I might also refer to Sheriff Stewart and see if, thoughts on that up in Park County might be something that could be done as well. I know that we met at the SAR Council earlier this summer in Casper and have talked about the BCA radios and the 307 channel and putting that at the trailheads where people that use these BCA radios in the backcountry could use that as a rescue channel, or to at least to help bring personnel into their location.
Sheriff Stewart, do you have any thoughts?
As far as the registration card and that, I think it needs to be explored. I mean, we really need to look into that. And that's why I think we're going to address it at our next council meeting. What can we do to maybe create this registry and see what we can do with that? And so we'll take whatever is said here back to that and see what we can get done as far as that goes. If you want me to touch on that BCA radio and that campaign we got going on. So We were working on it in Park County. This BCA radios, Backcountry Adventure, they create these radios, and they're a radio that a lot of guys put on their avalanche pack, and then they've got the transmitter receiver up here where they can talk into it. Very effective. And what we're finding up in Park County is almost every snowmobiler coming into the country up there has them. They're very popular. The other thing we find too is they're coming from a lot of these lower elevations. They'll have a BCA radio, but they won't have their avalanche pack, which to me is absurd because of the avalanche we have. So what we did is we found out we were working on it from Sublette County and Teton and Park and on all these different angles with these radios, trying to come up with a common frequency. Ours started with that rescue of the 8 snowmobilers. They had BCA radios. One of the guys that got out told us what frequency they were on. We were having a heck of a time reaching them on that, but they had changed their frequency without this one guy knowing. So I took my BCA in, and ironically on that one, Teton was the one flying with us over there. It was their helicopter we were using. We dropped a radio using the guardianship in there, and then we were able to talk to them. So this campaign come about, we were going to try to get a common frequency statewide and really campaign out there and get it out to the public so that they would know, hey, rescue is going to be on this 307 frequency. So on a BCA radio, you can actually turn it to a 307. Well, guys use other radios that are programmable as well. So we actually, with this campaign, they came to the council. We entertained this. We voted to give them some money to get this campaign out there and promote this 307 channel. It also on the promotion, it has the frequency you can program into a regular radio as well. So our goal is to get these out at every place where they sell licenses, sell ATV, trailheads, at unloading spots for whether it's ice climbing or whatever. So they have a common frequency. If they call for rescue, they know we can communicate them. And what we're finding in our area is almost all these ice climbers now are running with these radios too, so they can communicate back and forth. Very inexpensive, $180 if you go buy them. We were actually starting to use them a lot more in search and rescue because I'd rather pay for we get them for $120, pay for a $120 radio as opposed to a $4,000 Motorola radio. So that campaign, we're trying to roll it out before the winter hits. And it's a very nice logo. It's going to be just a big, like you're all familiar with Ski Patrol, the Red Cross. This is going to be like a gold cross, brown letters for our state, kind of more. And so that's our big goal, is to roll that out for the summer, which I think will help us immensely when it comes to some of these types of rescues. So and you're familiar with like the talk about radios as well. That's what a lot of hunters use. So that's why we're putting out this frequency, because those aren't necessarily going to have that 307. It's going to have a programmable frequency as well. So.
And the BCA radio, you purchase those like any sporting event store or?
Certainly, we have them like at our local snowmobile shops and some of that. You can order them online. They have them in outdoor shops. They're different than a little handheld in that they've got a receiver that works, the antenna, you throw it in your backpack, your avalanche pack, so it's in the air, and then it's got a corded mic that you can clip to your lapel or clip to your backpack or whatever. And so they're very attainable, and they're becoming quite common as well as we start looking further into these rescues we're doing.
How do they send and receive? I mean, is it off of a cell tower, or how does that work? Is it associated with WildLink or?
No, it's strictly line of sight. There's no
okay.
repeater. Now we are working and figured out a way to create a repeater for these things. So we have a safety shelter, which is a semi reefer truck up on the mountain that's got a heater. Well, it's got a wood stove. It's for safety of snowmobiling. We have installed in that safety shelter one of our radios from the sheriff's office and a generator and so forth. It has a wind generator. It has solar power. So we create that as our main hub of operations when we have a rescue up on that mountain. So we've found a way to put a repeater on there to extend the range of those radios. Currently, a good line of sight will be maybe a couple miles. We found that we were able to reach up to 25 miles by testing with that repeater. And the reason 307 was chosen, my thought was 911, but we found out in those radios, that's like a 0.5 watt channel. And so the 307 is a 2 watt channel. So that's why we shied from the 911 to the 307.
Interesting. That's amazing. And I assume people are using their cell phones too. That's another way that they're calling for help.
Yes. And so one of the things we did on the Beartooth with limited cell phone coverage up there is we took an old flip phone and on any phone you can dial 911, whether you have a plan or not. So if you have an old cell phone, that isn't connected, you can dial 911 and it will go. It'll hit any tower around. So if you have AT&T, it'll hit Verizon, it'll hit any other tower. It'll grab the nearest tower with 911. So what we did is we put a booster as well in that center up there, that safety shelter, and it'll flip phone in there. So if somebody needs to, or if you have Verizon up there, the guys with Verizon are able to call out from up there, which we didn't have that capability before.
Brilliant. Back to the foundation, is Teton County the only county that has a foundation for funding, or do most counties?
Representative Flitner, good question. So what we found is, I actually looked into this not even a week ago because we were curious to see of the foundations out there. I would say that I wouldn't say half. I would say about a third of the counties I've found a search and rescue foundation. We have one up there. We can't raise the money of Teton County, but we still do pretty good. But yeah, they're pretty common. I know Bighorn County has one. I think I found about a third of the counties that have them.
Okay, thank you. Committee, further questions? All right, thank you. And what about Fremont County? Do we have anybody online from Fremont County? No, nobody to represent the winds. Okay, well, we thank you so much for your service and for your time, and just thank you. It's valuable information. We appreciate it. You bet. What is our time, by the way, committee? Is it? Okay. So, yes, sir.
Thank you. With just a little license, just a final comment or two. I was in my mind trying to go where I think my good friend from the Senate, the chairman, was going. We have a couple of issues at this meeting in these 2 days that are similar. And that is, it just seems like our sportsmen carry a lot of the load on all fronts, including protecting our waterways and rescuing hikers. But I am not quite ready to suggest anything that will work to encourage others to help us support these endeavors. So I'll keep thinking about it. But one of the reasons that I've had some reticence on the aquatic invasive effort is just that it falls right on the boaters only. That's it. And this is similar. So thank you.
Senator Landon, I thank you for your comments, and that's correct. Yeah, it is a question, a puzzle. Yes. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was wondering if the folks would go with a search and rescue card, if that would need legislation, or if that's something that they could do as part of their rules, or however they are structured.
Mr. Brody, do you have a question or an answer for that, or do you know? No. Okay. Does the council? Yes, Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I wonder if the good sheriff just told us that they were going to take that up this fall and be communicating about that. And it's possible that maybe they could bring something back to us third meeting. And while that's a little late for our committee to support it, maybe several of us could get on an effort if it looked like something that the search and rescue thought might work. But at least, gentlemen, go knowing that we're willing to support anything that we can come up with to involve more folks.
Yeah.
Right.
Sheriff Stewart, sure. When is our last committee meeting? Is it in November or October? October? And when will you all meet? We may be meeting before you all meet. Yeah. But at least update the committee if you would after your meeting, and let us know if an idea arises. It's certainly something that we will discuss. So, Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just along those lines, I mean, I'm someone who loves to recreate, and I'm just thinking of opportunities where I'm pinged and asked to support search and rescue, and I can't think of them. Was recently camping at Kirk Gowdy, and they have new tent camping sites, and you have to check in. And I asked, is this just to release and facilitate the reservation process? And they said, no, if there's a fire or a threat, we want to know you're there so we can, you know, hopefully get you out. And I thought, so I'm just kind of thinking of those moments. And then again, thinking of this situation of the person that we just lost in my community. You know, there was communication with his hiking group, but then they discovered other people that were hiking that same trail at that same time in an effort to recover him. And so I'm just thinking of those instances where someone would register. So there's kind of like a notion out there that you're hiking this trail and it would be a two-ended benefit of, you know, if you can look at your registry and for $10, again, I'm just thinking of the monetizing and ways to encourage hikers and backcountry users to want to use the service, not have to, because I think it's hard to ask the citizens why I'm going to pay money to go walk. But, you know, just a little more coordination that you wouldn't need to monitor it for every hiker, every trip, only those where there's a problem and something's come up where you can say, okay, there's that group. They've all registered. They all have their $10 fee. We know they're on this trail. Who else is out there? You know, what did they see? What did they run into this other hiker? And so that's kind of the concept I'm thinking of. But the question I have is, you know, does it need to all be coordinated through your offices in the state of Wyoming? Or is this something that private foundations could work together to start linking up? So I think there's some thinking, but to my good senator from Natrona County, that's the concern, is how do we give hikers and other people like that opportunity to click, yes, I'll spend $10 to support this effort. Right now, I can't think of a way that they do that, short of like being asked or, you know, that's what I'm trying to get solved through in our puzzle through a little bit.
A mechanism. That's what we're looking for.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I apologize to our committee online who probably didn't hear any of that. Sorry, we've gotten too casual, but we were just, they were just saying that there are a couple counties that have a mechanism in place and they're going to explore further options when they meet in October, and we'll go from there. And public comment on this, do we have any county commissioners that want to provide any? No? Okay. All right. Well, with that, again, thank you for your time. And at this time, we'll break for lunch. What is our time? What is it, 1:17 or 12:17? Okay, we'll just take a, can we do it 45? Lunch is provided today, compliments of Wyoming Downs. And we can just eat it here. We'll leave the doors open, so we won't be discussing anything as a group. We'll just be visiting amongst ourselves about our children and our families. And so with that, we'll come back in at 1, Mr. Brody.
Well, I guess I just wanted to offer that we had anticipated some extra time to get to Du Bois to get lunch. So the agenda speaks to starting at 1:15.
Oh, okay.
Which would be 1 hour, and
Very
we'd be
good.
right on time.
Okay, good. We're back in at 1:15 and I see our Wyoming Downs girls have arrived. So thank you all. We'll see you all in an hour, and committee online, we'll see you back here at 1:15. Thank you.